Chapter 2006. On Li Juanxian's side, his men began to split up according to their assigned missions, and within Taiyuan City, there was a restless force stirring in the shadows. The great Tang authorities are going too far. First, they accused Brother Chong and of colluding with the Turks, and then they sealed up Brother Chong and his ironware shop. Then, Brother Chong was publicly assassinated while escorted by the Wang clan guards. In my view, the Taiyuan authorities are colluding with the Wang clan and want to use this chance to seize Brother Chong and's ironware shop. In the western part of Taiyuan City, Jining Square, the Kong residence. In a secret underground room, Kong Chu and several middle-aged men in luxurious robes were seated around a round table, furiously denouncing the atrocities of the Taiyuan authorities. Who doesn't know that the weapons forged by Brother Chong and's ironware shop are the best in the world? Before this, the Wang clan had always coveted Brother Chong and's ironware shop, and the Wang clan was inextricably linked to this incident. The Wang clan of Taiyuan is a 1,000-year-old clan of the Central Plains, and the local authorities have always taken good care of it. Thus, the provincial governor's office covered up the Wang clan's crimes and didn't allow this old man to participate in this investigation. Even more hateful is that they even sealed off Taiyuan City. This old man applied to return to the Kong Kingdom and inform Brother Chong and's family of Brother Chong and's death, but Provincial Governor Wang didn't allow it. Poor Brother Chong, and has always been a righteous man, but now, not only has he died for no reason, he has to suffer such injustice. This truly pains this old man's heart. Kong Chu was filled with righteous indignation and grief, and he couldn't help but dance with joy as he spoke. Everyone fell silent. After a long while, a stout middle-aged man dressed in luxurious purple robes clasped his hands and said, "We heard of Brother Chong and's death. We heard about Brother Chong and's matter yesterday, but at that time, Source Peak City was under martial law, and it was inconvenient for us to go out. We never thought that Brother Kong Chu would run around alone for Brother Chong. This brother is truly ashamed." When the rest of the people heard this, they followed the purple-clothed man and cupped their hands, expressing the same feeling. Kong Chu hurriedly waved his hands and said, "The Taiyuan authorities went too far in this matter. What does Brother Chong have to do with all of you? Everyone, please don't blame yourself." The man's name was Shunzhan, and he came from the kingdom of the 9 Jiao clan. On Li Juanxian's side, his men began to split up according to their assigned missions, and within Taiyuan City, there was a restless force stirring. The Great Tang's officials have gone too far. First, they accused Brother Chong of colluding with the Turks. Then, they closed down Brother Chong and's ironware shop, following which Brother Chong was openly assassinated under the escort of the Wang clan's guards. In my opinion, the Taiyuan government is colluding with the Wang family. They want to take this opportunity to seize Brother Chong and's ironware shop, west of Taiyuan City, Jining Square, Kong Manor. In an underground secret room, Kong Chu and several middle-aged men dressed in fine clothes sat around a round table. They were currently angrily complaining about the atrocities committed by the Taiyuan government. Who doesn't know that the weapons forged by Brother Chong and's ironware shop are the best in the world? Before this, the Wang clan has been drooling over Brother Chong and's ironware shop for a very long time. There is no way that the Wang clan can escape its involvement in this matter. Moreover, the Wang clan of Taiyuan is a 1,000-year-old clan of the Central Plains, and the local government has always taken great care of it. Thus, the provincial governor's residence covered up the Wang clan's crimes and did not allow this old man to participate in this investigation. Even more detestable is that they even sealed off Taiyuan City. This old man applied to leave the city and return to the Kong Kingdom to inform Brother Chong and's family of the grievous news of Brother Chong and's death, but Governor Wang refused. Poor Brother Chong, and who has devoted his life to justice and justice, has not only died a dubious death, he has also suffered such injustice. This truly pains this old man's heart. Kong Chu was filled with righteous indignation and grief, and when he spoke of his grief and indignation, he couldn't help but dance with joy. Everyone fell silent. After a long while, a stout middle-aged man dressed in fine purple robes clasped his hands and said, "We heard of Brother Chong An's death. We heard about Brother Chong An's matter yesterday, but at that time, Source Peak City was under martial law, and it was inconvenient for us to go out. We never thought that Brother Kong Chu would run around alone for Brother Chong. This brother is truly ashamed." When the others heard this, they followed the purple-clothed man and clasped their hands to express their feelings. Chapter 2007. Why haven't the gates opened today? Lord Soldier, how long will the gates be sealed? In the past, the Celestial King clan had both openly and covertly mobilized a search for Zhu Xiecheng and Kong Chang'an. Yesterday, the 10,000 soldiers of the Bing Province barracks had spread to every corner of Taiyuan City, searching from house to house for the weapons smuggled out of the Chu Ironworks. Taiyuan City had already been sealed for 2 days. The citizens went from their initial fear to accepting reality and slowly calming down. However, today was already the 3rd day, and there were still Bing Province barracks soldiers everywhere in the city. The 4 city gates were still sealed. Some of the citizens could no longer remain calm. They woke up very early and went to the city gates to ask the general guarding the city gates. On the orders of Army Attaché Fong and Governor Wang, the gates are sealed and the Turkic spies hidden in Taiyuan City are to be captured. For the next few days, no one is allowed to enter or leave Taiyuan City until all the Turkic spies have been captured. Taiyuan City's defenses had long ago been taken over by the soldiers of the Bing Province barracks. These soldiers clearly knew more about what had happened in the city in the last few days than the ordinary people, and they coldly replied, "What? Turkic spies in Taiyuan City? Then when will the government capture all the Turkic spies?" No comment. The people who had been rebuffed by the guard general could do nothing but return home in disappointment. In truth, no one knew when the Turkic spies would be captured, and the guard general naturally couldn't answer. Moreover, the provincial governor's residence had yet to announce to the public that Li Tai had been captured by the Turkic spies, so the soldiers of the Bing Province barracks did not say anything. The sun had just risen, revealing half of its face from the east. At this time, most of the citizens had already woken up. The news that the city gate was still closed began to spread among the citizens. Then, under the urging of the provincial governor's office, all the citizens began to inform each household that the city gate would be closed for the next few days and that the city would continue to be under martial law. If there was nothing important, each household should stay at home and try their best not to go out. As no one could give a specific date for when the gates would be closed, some of the people began to worry. Why haven't the gates opened today? Sir, how long are you going to seal the city gates? In the past, the Heavenly King family's forces, both on the surface and in the dark, had been frantically searching for Zhu Xiecheng and Kong Chang'an in the city. Yesterday, the 10,000 soldiers of the Bing Province barracks had spread out to every corner of Taiyuan City, going door to door to search for the batch of weapons smuggled out of Chu family's ironware shop. Taiyuan City had been sealed off for 2 days. The citizens went from their initial fear to accepting reality and slowly calming down. However, today was already the 3rd day, and there were still Bing Province barracks soldiers everywhere in the city. The 4 city gates were still sealed. Some of the citizens could no longer remain calm. They woke up very early and went to the city gates to ask the general guarding the city gates. On the orders of Adjunct Fong and Governor Wang, seal the city gates and capture the Turkic spies hiding in Taiyuan City. For the next few days, no one is allowed to enter or leave Taiyuan City until all the Turkic spies have been captured. The defense of Taiyuan City had been taken over by the soldiers of the Bing Province barracks. These soldiers clearly knew more about what had happened in the city in the past few days than ordinary citizens. What? A Turkic spy in Taiyuan City? Then when will the government be able to capture all the Turkic spies? We have no comment. The citizens who had been given the cold shoulder by the general could do nothing but return home in disappointment. In truth, no one knew when they would be able to capture all the Turkic spies. Naturally, the guards at the city gates were unable to answer the question. Moreover, The provincial governor's residence had still not announced to the public that Li Tai had been kidnapped by the Turkic spies, so the soldiers of the Bing province barracks did not say anything. The sun had just risen, and the red half of its face peeked out from the east. At this time, the vast majority of the people had already woken up. The news that the city gates were still sealed began to circulate among the citizens. Soon after, the soldiers of the provincial governor's residence began to inform the citizens that the city gates would be sealed for the next few days and that the city would remain under martial law. If there was nothing important, they were to stay at home and not go out. As no one could give a specific date for when the city gates would be sealed, some of the citizens began to worry. Chapter 2008. Li Junxian had given Wang Liaoyuan the mission of maintaining order in the city and preventing the people of the city from rebelling against the closed gates. But not long after Wang Liaoyuan returned to the government office, he received bad news. All the grain stores in Taiyuan City were out of grain. It wasn't that the grain merchants were trying to raise the price of grain, but that there was no grain. How could this be? As an official, Wang Liaoyuan knew better than anyone the importance of food to the people. As the saying goes, food is the most important thing for the people. If the news of Taiyuan City being without food continued to spread, Wang Liaoyuan believed that Taiyuan City would fall into chaos soon. When the time came, countless people would rush out of the city to buy grain. Even if Li Junxian hadn't given him this mission, as the Bing province governor, Wang Liaoyuan had to do his utmost to solve the problem of Taiyuan City. This subordinate will go. In the rear office of the provincial governor's residence, the middle-aged scholar, surnamed Tang, clasped his hands and bowed. He also knew that this matter was urgent, so he immediately began to write a decree. When he was done, Wang Liaoyuan saw that the contents of the decree were correct, so he stamped it with his seal and handed it to Constable Feng. Constable Feng, I order you to immediately arrange for someone to make a copy of this notice and then post it in the city. Also, gather all the yamen and county yamen runners and strengthen the patrols in the city to prevent anyone from taking advantage of this opportunity to cause trouble. If you don't have enough people, immediately report it. This official will go and borrow soldiers from Advisor Feng. Constable Feng clasped his hands and said, "Yes, this subordinate will go." After saying this, Constable Feng took the decree from Wang Liaoyuan, turned around, and left in a hurry. In the back office, Wang Liaoyuan frowned as he looked in the direction that Constable Feng had left in. He had a feeling that something was wrong. Since the world was at peace, there had never been a shortage of food in Taiyuan City. Although the 4 city gates of Taiyuan City had been sealed off for the past 2 days, even if Taiyuan City had been sealed off for 10 days to half a month, there would still be enough food for the hundreds of thousands of people in the city. But now all the grain stores in the city had suddenly run out of food. This made Wang Liaoyuan, who had calmed down, feel that something was wrong. Was someone playing tricks in the shadows? Wang Liaoyuan couldn't help but wonder. Does the provincial governor feel that today's matter is a little strange? The middle-aged scholar saw Wang Liaoyuan deep in thought, and his eyes flashed. He paused for a moment and then asked tentatively, "There is indeed something fishy about this." Wang Liaoyuan came back to his senses and nodded. "Mr. Pang, did you notice something?" Scholar Pang shook his head and said, "Even the provincial governor can't tell. So how can I?" But this Pang feels that Taiyuan City has only been sealed for 2 days. With the world at peace and the great Tang free of war, the grain stores in the city shouldn't have run out of grain, and the people in the city shouldn't have been fighting over grain. There must be some secret behind this. Perhaps someone was manipulating all of this in the dark. Moreover, the major grain stores in the city are only experiencing a shortage of grain. No grain merchants took the opportunity to raise the price of grain. This shows that today's incident happened so suddenly that many grain merchants did not expect it. They are not the mastermind behind the scenes because they did not profit from it. Chapter 2009. Ha ha ha. Wonderful. Wonderful. Boston's plan is wonderful. Right now, the grain stores in Taiyuan City have run out of grain to sell, and the people are panicking. In my opinion, it won't be long before the people of Taiyuan City start a rebellion. When the time comes, let's see if Provincial Governor Wang will still seal the city gates. West of Taiyuan City, Jining Square, Kong Chu, Kong Songping, and Shenzhen and the others were still seated around the round table. At this moment, Kong Songping, who had just received news from outside, couldn't help but clap his hands and laugh. That's right, that's right. Boston's plan is to remove the firewood from under the cauldron, throwing Taiyuan City into chaos. You've helped Brother Chong invent his anger. Boston is truly experienced and resourceful. I'd like to see how the Taiyuan government can continue to be arrogant. As soon as Kong Songping's voice fell, a few people immediately sent flattering words to Shenzhen. The atmosphere in the secret room was peaceful, and the dark clouds that had hung over everyone's heads seemed to have dissipated. The sky was clear after the storm, but Shenzhen himself did not seem happy that his plan had worked. His face was expressionless, as if he was pondering something. Kong Chu was a meticulous person who was best at reading people's expressions. Seeing this, he couldn't help but ask, "Brotherin, now that the Taiyuan provincial governor's mansion is in chaos, and we've helped Brother Chong invent his anger, why don't you seem happy?" After hearing Kong Chu's words, everyone quieted down and turned their eyes to Shenzhen. Shenzhen came back to his senses and calmly said, "I advise you not to be overly optimistic. This humble and advises everyone not to be too optimistic. No matter what, Taiyuan City is the largest city in the north of the Great Tang. Even if we mobilize our men and empty out all the grain stores in the city, it's still wishful thinking to think that we could defeat the Taiyuan provincial governor's residence. Everyone, don't forget that there are still official warehouses in Taiyuan City. Based on what I know, Taiyuan's official warehouses contain no less than 10,000 share of grain. With so much grain, the government is completely capable of calming the people in a short time." And Xuanshan's words were like a basin of cold water, instantly calming everyone down. Kong Songping anxiously said, "Right? There are still official warehouses in Taiyuan City. If Governor Wang takes out the grain from the official storehouse and sells it to the common people, what should we do?" "Ha! Wonderful! Wonderful! Boston's plan was brilliant. Right now, the grain stores in Sourcepeak City have run out of grain to sell. The common people are in a state of panic. In my opinion, it won't be long before the common people of Sourcepeak City rebel. At that time, let's see if that provincial Governor Wang will still seal the city gates." In the western part of Taiyuan City, Jining Square, in the underground chamber of Kong Chu's residence, Kong Chu, Kong Songping, and Shenzhen and the others were still sitting around the round table. At this time, Kong Songping, who had just received the news from outside, couldn't help but clap his hands and laugh. That's right. Boston has taken drastic measures to deal with the root of the problem, causing Sourcepeak City to instantly fall into chaos. It could be considered as helping Brother Chong invent his anger. Boston is truly knowledgeable and resourceful. Let's see how the Taiyuan government can continue to be arrogant now. As soon as Kong Songping's voice fell, a few people immediately sent flattering words to Shenzhen. The atmosphere in the secret chamber was peaceful. The dark clouds that had previously shrouded everyone's heads seemed to have dissipated, and the sky was clear after the rain. On the other hand, Shenzhen himself didn't reveal any joy because his plan had worked. He was expressionless, as if he was pondering something. Chapter 2010. There are guards on the east, south, west, and north sides of the inn. There are 10 guards near the main entrance on the south side, and 3 to 5 guards on the east, west, and north sides. Of course, this is just the defensive strength on the surface. The enemy has also set up many hidden sentries. As I saw just now, there were hidden sentries on the banyan trees on the southwest side of the inn and on the piles of wood on the northwest side. In a corner tower on the southern walls of Taiyuan City, Li Junxian put down his binoculars and looked at Tongfu into the north of the tower. He turned to Wang Chengwu, Han Lijing, Bruiser, and Dugu Feiying. Tongfu Inn is currently heavily guarded, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call it airtight. It's almost impossible to sneak in unless we can instantly take care of all the sentries outside. Otherwise, the moment the Turkic spies in the inn notice anything strange, they'll immediately attack your highness. Yes, Li Junshin's group had come to scout the area. They wanted to observe the defenses of Tongfu Inn so that they could come up with a plan to rescue Li Tai. For the sake of not alerting the enemy, Li Junshin's group did not openly approach Tongfu Inn. Instead, they chose a tower in the southern part of Taiyuan City. This place was around 1 li away from Tongfu Inn, making it difficult for them to be discovered. Moreover, this place was on higher ground, making it easier for them to observe the situation around Tongfu Inn. Of course, this was all thanks to the military binoculars Li Junxian had brought from Chang'an. After hearing Li Junxian's explanation of Tongfu Inn's defenses, everyone couldn't help but deeply frown. Dugu Feng couldn't help but ask. These fellows are rather cautious. Then what should we do now? We can't just stand here and watch, can we? Li Junxian shook his head, his brow furrowed. He didn't have a good idea of how to deal with the Turkic spies' hole-in-the-wall defense strategy. Most importantly, the enemy had Li Tai as a hostage, so they had nothing to fear. If they wanted to rescue Li Tai, they had to do it secretly and without anyone noticing. The atmosphere in the room froze for a moment. Iron Egg's mind began to whirl. Suddenly, a thought occurred to him, and he couldn't help but ask, besides the Turkic spy and Azure Sparrow, is there anyone else in Tongfu Inn? For example, the original tenants or servants of the inn. Li Junxian didn't know why Iron Egg asked this question, but he still replied, no. According to our intelligence, after the Anxi Turk spies chose to settle down in Tongfu Inn last night, they chased out all the staff and guests of the inn. In the process, several guests were injured or killed. There are people guarding the east, south, west, and north sides of the inn. There are a total of 10 people guarding the south main entrance, and 3 to 5 people guarding the east, west, and north sides. Of course, this is just the defensive strength on the surface. The enemy has also set up many hidden sentries. I just saw that there were hidden sentries on the banyan tree to the southwest and on the pile of firewood to the northwest of the inn. In a corner tower on the southern wall of Taiyuan City, Li Junxian put down his binoculars and looked at Tongfu into the north of the tower. He turned to Wang Chengwu, Han Lijing, Bruiser, and Dugu Feng. Tongfu Inn is currently heavily guarded, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call airtight. It's almost impossible to sneak in unless we can instantly eliminate all the sentries outside. Otherwise, the moment the Turkic spies in the inn notice anything strange, they'll immediately attack your highness. Yes, Li Junshin's group had come to scout the area. They wanted to observe the current situation of Tongfu Inn so that they could formulate a plan to rescue Li Tai. Chapter 2011. That is indeed the case. On the southern walls of Taiyuan City, Li Junxian used his binoculars to see that the Turkic spies who had just emerged from Tongfu Inn were all exhausted, and some of them were even yawning as they walked. A hint of joy appeared on his face. It seems like this general's predictions were correct. Last night, these Turkic spies were worried that we would try to rescue His Highness, so they remained vigilant the entire night. It seems like they didn't get much sleep last night. Today, the leader of the Turkic spies learned his lesson and began to have his men work in shifts. But the Turkic spies who came out to take over the shift didn't sleep well last night. They probably won't be able to last until the afternoon. Then should we move out in the afternoon? Iron Egg's eyes brightened, and he couldn't help but eagerly ask. Although there were several dozen Turkic spies in Tongfu Inn, Iron Egg was extremely confident in the strength of his side. After all, they had 2 Grandmaster-level experts, and both of them were at the middle Grandmaster level. If they took advantage of this moment of exhaustion to launch a surprise attack, they really did have a chance of breaking into the inn and rescuing Li Tai. Dugu Feng and Wang Chengwu's eyes brightened as they turned to Li Junxian. No, the chances of success are too low. Li Junxian's eyes dimmed, his brow furrowed as he mentally calculated. Finally, he helplessly shook his head and said, although they'll probably be extremely tired between the late afternoon and the late afternoon, if we choose to strike during the day, Even if we can silently eliminate their sentries, there's a high chance that we'll be discovered by the hidden sentries they've hidden in the area. If we're discovered, all our efforts will be for naught, and the Turkic spies will be on high alert. We won't have a chance to rescue His Highness. In truth, Li Juanxian's worries were not without reason. Attacking during the day was different from attacking at night, and there was a major disadvantage to attacking during the day. If there was a flaw in any part of the plan, it would be very easy for the enemy to notice. This was unless they could simultaneously eliminate all of the Turkic spies' sentries outside the inn, but Li Juanxian and the others were still present. That truly is the case. On the southern walls of Taiyuan City, Li Juanxian used his binoculars to see that the Turkic spies who had just emerged from Tongfu and were all exhausted, and some of them were even yawning as they walked. A hint of joy flashed across his face. It seems like this general's predictions were correct. Last night, these Turkic spies were worried that we would try to rescue His Highness, so they remained vigilant. It seems like they didn't sleep last night. Today, the leader of the Turkic spies learned his lesson and began to have his men take turns to work. However, the Turkic spies who came out to take over the shift didn't sleep well last night. I reckon that they won't be able to last until the afternoon. Then, should we take action in the afternoon? Hearing this, Bruiser's eyes lit up, and he could not help but feel excited. Although there were hundreds of Turkic spies in the Tongfu Inn, Tai Dan was very confident in the strength of his side. After all, they had 2 masters at the Grandmaster middle stage. If they took advantage of the enemy's exhaustion and negligence, they would attack them. Chapter 2012. TSK. What are you being so cocky for? Let's see how arrogant you can be after I'm rescued. Within the Tongfu Inn, Li Tai cast a disdainful glance at Xianye's back as he muttered in a low voice. Of course, words were words, but filling one's stomach was still the most important. Li Tai went downstairs with a full stomach and arrived at the hall on the first floor. He saw that the table in the middle of the hall had already been set up. Li Tai went up to take a look. There were 3 dishes and 1 soup. Although he didn't know how it tasted, it looked quite sumptuous. At that moment, Li Tai did not stand on ceremony. He sat down directly and began his breakfast journey, which was like a whirlwind sweeping away the clouds. Although he was imprisoned, this didn't affect Li Tai's appetite. Of course, this had a lot to do with the fact that Xianyi and the others didn't dare to harm his life. Since he couldn't leave this damn place for a while, and there was no danger to his life by staying here, then why was he still on tenterhooks? Wasn't he just looking for trouble for himself? So, in the entire Tongfu Inn, Li Tai was the person that was living the most comfortable life. He didn't have to worry about food or clothing. How was he like a hostage? He was clearly a lord. You seem to treat this king Wei very well. Not only do you provide him with good food and drinks, but you also don't let people tie his hands and feet. Aren't you afraid that he'll escape? Don't you know that our lives are all tied to him? At the corner of the corridor on the 2nd floor of the inn, Xianyi and Sky Eagle were silently watching Li Tai on the 1st floor. At this moment, Sky Eagle suddenly withdrew his gaze and looked at his companion beside him as he asked meaningfully. Xianyi's expression didn't change, but his heart suddenly tightened. He said coldly, "You also know that our lives are tied to him? It's precisely because of this that I let him stay here with good food and drinks. He's a smart person. Give him some benefits, and he'll do his best to cooperate with us. If he's pushed to the edge and fights to the death, can you bear the consequences?" Fight to the death. He's a prince after all. His status is noble. How could he bear to die? Sky Eagle said disapprovingly. Xianyi shook his head and said, "No, you don't know him well enough. Although he is a prince, he does not have the arrogant and unruly nature of those princes. His thoughts are meticulous, and he is not a coward. Otherwise, when you went to the guest room to capture him last night, he would not have used his own life to force you to let go of his companions." At first, Sky Eagle wanted to refute, but the second half of Xianye's sentence caused him to involuntarily recall the scene of him capturing Li Tai in the Taiyuan Courier Station's Iching Pavilion last night. At that time, when he was about to kill the Iron Egg, it was Li Tai who stood out and pressed a dagger to his throat with a determined expression. using his own life to force him to let go of the iron egg. The moment he recalled the resolute viciousness in Li Tai's eyes, Sky Eagle couldn't help but swallow the rebuttal that was already at the tip of his tongue. Even though he didn't say it out loud, he had to admit that Li Tai was indeed quite different from the nobles in his impression. He was a ruthless character. After a few probing attempts from last night to this morning, we basically don't have to worry about him escaping. He knows his place very well. Now that we're short on manpower, we don't have to waste manpower on him. Next, we need to focus on the defense of the inn. We have to be tight on the outside and loose on the inside. We must not let the people from the government sneak in. Chapter 2013. After the soldiers finished their morning exercises, Li Zishuan and Sun Jiping briefly discussed the arrangements for today's fighting competition. Thus, the two of them arrived at the cafeteria a little later than usual. The two of them found a line with fewer people and started lining up. In response to the soldiers' enthusiastic greetings, Li Zishuan and Sun Jiping nodded in response. The soldiers were tactful enough to not ask Li Zishuan to cut in line. After this period of interaction, they already knew Li Zishuan's temperament. No special treatment, strict adherence to the rules. But at this moment, in front of the line to Li Zishuan's right, a discordant voice sounded. "Hey, little Xian, come quick. Cut in behind me." It was Cheng Chumo. After the morning exercises, Li Zishuan and Sun Jiping had something to discuss. He and Yuchi Baolin, on the other hand, ran to the cafeteria as fast as they could as usual. That was why he was able to line up at the front of the line. But this idiot's words were too *king ambiguous, wasn't it? Scram. Hearing this, Li Zishuan's face instantly darkened. He glared fiercely at Cheng Chumo and blurted out, "Scram. If you don't want to cut in, then don't cut in. Why are you scolding me?" Cheng Chumo, who was standing in front of the line, was instantly dumbfounded. Speaking of which, he had good intentions. Why was Li Zishuan so angry? Cheng Chumo couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he thought about it. He could only mumble to himself before turning his head away from Li Zishuan. Normally, he would treat Li Zishuan as his brother and would occasionally bicker with him. If this was any other day, he would definitely roll up his sleeves and fight with Li Zishuan for 300 rounds. Cough, even though he could not win. But now, they were in the military camp and Li Zishuan was leading the soldiers. Cheng Chumo understood that he could not bicker with Li Zishuan like he usually did. This was because it would hurt Li Zishuan's prestige in the Black Armored Army. Chonyo, did you forget that the Yamacho never cut in line? No matter if it's in the academy or the military camp. Yuchi Baolin, who was standing behind Cheng Chumo, could not help but remind him. Speaking of which, Cheng Chumo was really sincere. Previously, when he asked Li Zishuan to cut in line, he actually asked Li Zishuan to cut in line behind him, which was in front of Yuchi Baolin. Luckily, it was Yuchi Baolin who was standing behind him. If it was someone with a bad temper, they might have cut him. Of course I know. I'm just thinking that we are not considered outsiders, right? Xiao Xian is not cutting in line. He's asking us to help him line up. Cheng Chumo's eyes widened as he tried to justify himself. Sun Jiping actually did not get Li Zishuan's anger. He only looked at Li Zishuan curiously. Seeing that Li Zishuan had no intention of explaining, he shifted his gaze away and began to think about the martial arts competition later. Officer Li, previously we heard from the brothers in the A Battalion that the Emperor might come to the military camp to watch today's martial arts competition. Is it true? A rough-looking soldier, standing 2 to 3 steps in front of Li Zishuan, turned around and asked Li Zishuan. This person was the leader of the E Battalion, Wang Rong. Ding Dali, who helped Zhang Kongyan incite the soldiers to mutiny, was a soldier under his command. As soon as he finished speaking, the soldiers nearby all turned around and cast their gazes on Li Zishuan. Their eyes were filled with eagerness. Chapter 2014. Li Zishuan's guess was correct. At this moment, Li Er was indeed having a headache over how to rescue Li Tai. Moreover, apart from this matter, there was another matter that gave him an even bigger headache, and that was the inquiry from Empress Zhang's son. It was said that a woman's intuition was the most accurate. This saying was true for Empress Zhang's son. Last night, there had been an urgent report from Taiyuan, saying that Li Tai had been kidnapped by a Turkic spy. Zhao Song had knocked on the door of Li Er and Empress Zhangsuan's bedroom in fear and trepidation. It was only after Li Er had left that Zhao Song informed Li Er of this news. Although Empress Zhang's son didn't hear anything from beginning to end, her intuition told her that something urgent and important must have happened. Otherwise, Zhao Song wouldn't have disturbed Li Er's rest so late at night. When Li Er returned to his bedroom, Empress Zhang's son couldn't help but ask Li Er why Zhao Song was looking for him. Li Er casually made up a lie, saying that someone in the army was causing trouble. Then, he used the excuse of being sleepy and fell asleep quickly. Although Empress Zhang's son didn't really believe Li Er's reason, she didn't continue to ask after considering that Li Er had been busy with state affairs during the day and was indeed very tired. However, her mood was very perturbed. Finally, it was daybreak. It was almost time for the morning court. Empress Zhang's son quickly woke Li Er up and continued to ask about last night's matter. Li Er suddenly had a headache. If he told the truth, it would definitely make Empress Zhang's son heartbroken and worried all day long. However, if he didn't say it, he couldn't make up a reason that Empress Zhang's son could trust in such a short time. It was strange. In front of others, Li Er could easily lie with his eyes open. However, in front of Empress Zhang's son, it was difficult for him to lie flawlessly. This was because Empress Zhang's son knew him too well. Many times, even if he didn't say anything, Empress Zhang's son could guess a thing or two from his expression or the emotions hidden in his eyes. Your Majesty, it's time for the morning court. The officials are already waiting outside Taiji Palace. Just as Li Er and Empress Zhang's son were in a silent confrontation, Zhao Song's voice came from outside the bedroom. Li Er could not help but heave a sigh of relief in his heart. At this moment, Empress Zhang's son had already helped him put on his clothes. Li Er turned around and gently hugged Zhang's son, then said softly, "Guanyin maid, don't worry. Something did happen last night, but you have to believe us. Us will definitely resolve it. We will go to the morning court first. After the morning court, if you still want to know, we will tell you." Empress Zhang's son leaned on Li Er's broad chest and felt the sincerity in his words. She couldn't help but feel her heart soften. She thought that she had pushed him too far. There were some things that he didn't tell her. It should be for her own good. Why did she have to push him step by step? Yes, Your Majesty, please go to the morning court. Emperor Zhang's son took a step back and took the initiative to leave Li Er's embrace. The expression on her face also changed from the original worry to the present, pretending to be relaxed. All right. Li Er glanced at Empress Zhang's son, then turned and left. After exiting Lijing Palace, Li Er boarded the carriage and led Zhao Song straight to Taiji Palace. Halfway there, Li Er suddenly asked Zhao Song, "What about the thing I asked you to investigate last night?" Chapter 2015. During the morning court session, Li Er did not bring up the matter of Li Tai's capture in front of all the officials. On one hand, he felt that this was a family matter, and there was no need to bring it up in a court session. On the other hand, he had already done all he could with regards to Li Tai's capture. Whether or not he could save Li Tai now depended entirely on Li Juanxian's own abilities. Even if he told the officials, it wouldn't be of much help to the final outcome of the matter. The main topic of today's morning court session was the issue of the 150,000 soldiers entering the capital for training. The 8,000-some elite soldiers selected by the subjugation constabulary of the 12 prefectures, including Shang, Pu, Ning, Liang, Qi, and Qing, have already arrived outside Chang and set up camp around Yosho Mountain. The camp in the southern part of the city is estimated to be completed in another 2 days. When the time comes, these soldiers will all be able to move into the camp. As for the other prefectures and counties further away from Chang'an, the elite soldiers selected by the subjugation constabulary are also on their way and will arrive in a few days. Minister of War Li Jing was currently in Taiji Palace reporting to Li Er on the progress of the 150,000 soldiers entering the capital. The Flaming Yellow Chamber of Commerce's fundraising conference in Lantian County had been a great success, raising a total of 428,500 strings of cash for the imperial court. With this money, the Bureau of Revenue could finally relax and work with the Bureau of Works to recruit laborers and craftsmen, working day and night to build a camp for the 150,000 soldiers about to enter the capital. Their progress was nearly twice as fast as before. I'll have to trouble apothecary to settle these soldiers. Hearing this, Li'er nodded expressionlessly and said, since the soldiers from all over the world have arrived in Chang, and the ones who arrive first should be trained first. The war between the Tang Empire and the Turks will only start earlier than we expected. Pharmacist and Shubao, you must make the best use of the time to train the soldiers from all over the world. Li'er had long wanted to attack the Turks. If Wu Jie's infiltration of Yanhuang College to steal information was a catalyst, then the kidnapping of Li Tai last night was the equivalent of igniting a barrel of gunpowder. Those Turk spies had touched Li'er's reverse scale. After all, if a man couldn't even protect his wife and children, what kind of man was he? And Li'er wasn't an ordinary man. He was the emperor, the sovereign of a country. When an emperor is enraged, millions of corpses will fall and blood will flow for thousands of miles. Right now, Oldie was extremely anxious to attack the Turks. However, due to the insufficient logistics and the lack of training of the Northern Expedition Army, Li'er Tsai had no choice but to push back the date of the Kingdom War to 2 months later. This old subject obeys the decree. Li Jing and Qin Xiong could hear the urgency in Li'er's voice, so they stepped forward and cupped their fists. Li'er had previously appointed Li Jing as the Grand Steward of the 150,000 soldiers, while Qin Xiong was the Great General. They were responsible for the daily management and training of the army. After a pause, Li Jing hesitated. After a few moments of hesitation, he cupped his fists and said, reporting to Your Majesty, the soldiers that have recently arrived in Chang and should have come from Bing Province. But this old subject has received news that Taiyuan City's gates have been sealed for the last few days, and no one has been able to enter or leave. Thus, the soldiers from Bing Province might not be able to reach Chang in the next few days. Taiyuan City was sealed. Upon hearing this news from Li Jing, the officials of the imperial court couldn't help but be alarmed. Only now did they recall that Li Jing had said that there were no soldiers from Bing Province among the 12 provinces that had arrived outside Chang. Logically speaking, this shouldn't have been the case. This was because the distance between Bing Province and Chang and City was much closer than the distance between most of the 12 provinces. Now that they heard Li Jing say that Taiyuan City was sealed, they were all stunned. Taiyuan City was the largest city in the north of the Great Tang. Why would it be sealed for no reason? When the world had happened there. Seated at the head of the table, Li'er's expression flickered, but it quickly returned to normal. He indifferently said, there's no need to worry about the soldiers from Bing Province for now. Several days ago, a large number of Turkic spies were discovered in Taiyuan City. We have already dispatched 100 cavalry to Taiyuan City to capture them. Thus, Taiyuan City is under martial law for the next few days. Once the storm has calmed down, the soldiers from Taiyuan City will naturally come to Chang'an. Turkic spies? Upon hearing this, the officials of the court couldn't help but be alarmed. They began to discuss amongst themselves. Li'er wasn't willing to say anything more on this topic. He lightly coughed, indicating for the officials to be quiet. Li Jing's eyes flashed as he seemed to understand Li'er's meaning. He stepped forward and cupped his fists. This old subject obeys the decree. Li'er nodded and then looked at the civil officials to the left of the imperial court. He solemnly asked, Beloved official Xiao, how is the preparation of the provisions for the 150,000 soldiers for the next 3 months? As the saying went, before the soldiers and horses moved, the provisions would move first. Although the vast majority of the 150,000 soldiers were still on their way, the imperial court had to prepare at least 3 months' worth of provisions for them. And the Great Tang Imperial Court, which had just received a massive sum of money from the donation conference, truly did have the strength and confidence to do so. Your Majesty, around 70% of the provisions for the army has already been prepared before the 150,000 soldiers arrive at Chang, and the preparations will definitely be completed. Xiao Yu calmly stepped forward and cupped his fists. The Ministry of Revenue was not lacking in money, so there was no need to complain about its efficiency. Thus, Xiao Yu, the steward of the great Tang's national treasury, spoke with even more confidence than before. Very good. Lier nodded in satisfaction, and then he turned to the officials and sternly said, "In 2 months, the imperial court will attack the plains. At that time, not only will the 300,000 soldiers from the various camps in the capital be the main force, the elite soldiers from the various provinces of the Great Tang will also be the main force of the northern expedition." Previously, there was a saying in the Tang Daily that we thought was very good. The rise and fall of the country is the responsibility of the people. At the donation conference in Lantian County, the merchants and common people were all willing to contribute generously to the imperial court's northern expedition against the Turks. All of you have read the books of the sages, are part of the court, and receive the salary of the country. All of you should spare no effort in preparing for the imperial court's northern expedition. In these 2 months, we hope that all the officials of the 6 ministries of the imperial court will be able to put aside all their selfish thoughts and focus on preparing for the northern expedition. We hope that the strength of the 450,000 soldiers in the northern expedition will rise to another level in 2 months. In this war, we can only win, not lose. If we win, all of you will continue to live in glory and wealth. If we lose, all of you will have your country destroyed and your families exterminated. As soon as the words, "the country is destroyed and the family is destroyed," came out, the atmosphere in the hall suddenly became a little tense. Lier did not deliberately shout, but every word he said was sonorous and powerful, echoing in every corner of the hall. All the officials in the hall were moved, and all the officials bowed in unison. This subject obeys the decree. We will spare no effort in preparing for the Turks. Chapter 2016. Because the 6 ministries of the court had been busy preparing for the 150,000 troops that were about to enter the capital, the morning court session had ended early. The end of the morning court session was good news for Lier in the past, because he could finally free himself from the busy government affairs and rest for a while. But today, Lier, who had finished the morning court session, didn't know where to go. There was a woman waiting for him in the imperial harem. It wasn't that he didn't want to see that woman. On the contrary, that woman was the love of his life. He just didn't want to face her today, as some of her questions were difficult for him to answer. But he couldn't just stay in Taiji Palace like this. That woman would definitely come looking for him once she knew that the morning court session had ended. Where should he go then? This sounded a little funny. The dignified son of heaven actually had a time when he didn't know where his place was. It was truly inconceivable. Your Majesty, the Black Armored Army's camp is holding a martial arts competition today. You previously told General Duan that you would be going back to observe. Do you want to go today? Just as Lier was feeling conflicted, Zhao Song came up to him and whispered to him. Lier, who was in a dilemma, was suddenly energized. He sat up straight and looked at Zhao Song. Without hesitation, he replied, "I'm going. Since I promised Minister Duan, I'll definitely go. You'll come with me too. As for the Empress, send someone to inform her so that she won't worry about me." Then, Lier stood up and prepared to leave the palace. He seemed to be more anxious than anyone else to leave the palace, leaving behind a stunned Zhao Song. What a joke. He was just thinking about how to temporarily avoid Empress Zhang's son. Now that he was about to doze off, someone sent him a pillow. Going to the Black Armored Army's camp to observe the martial arts competition was such a dignified excuse. How could he not use it? As for why he emphasized that Zhao Song should go with him, it was mainly because Zhao Song was one of the key informants who knew about Li Tai's capture. If he stayed in the palace, Empress Zhang's son might interrogate him. Although Zhao Song had always been loyal, he would definitely be put in a difficult position when faced with Empress Zhangxuan's interrogation. A moment later, Lier, dressed in casual clothes, left the palace with Zhao Song and a dozen or so guards. They were dressed lightly. On Empress Zhongxuan's side, ever since Li Er had left for morning court, she had been waiting for Li Er to come over after court ended. At this time, a palace maid came to report that Taiji Palace's court had ended. Empress Zhongxun couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. She secretly thought that when Li Er came over, she would definitely ask him about last night's matter. She was not an aggressive woman, especially when she was in the harem. She knew how to be a wife better than anyone else. Most of the time, if Li Er was unwilling to say something, she would never ask. But this time was different. She had a premonition that Zhao Song had come looking for Li Tai last night because something had happened to Li Tai and Taiyuan. Although it was just a vague intuition, she had to get to the bottom of this since it concerned her son's safety. Empress Zhongxun sat quietly in the side hall of the Lijing Palace. Her mood was not calm at all. A quarter of an hour passed, but she still did not see Li Er's figure. At this time, she could not sit still. Could it be that Li Er had directly gone to the Suite du Hall to read memorials after the morning court session? Chapter 2017. On the Black Armored Army drill ground, on the stage, Duan Jishuan's words had set the tone for today's fighting competition, and that was to stop when it was appropriate. No one was to intentionally injure or even kill their opponents. This was to prevent some people from using this opportunity to seek revenge. Now that the war between the Tang Empire and the Turks was imminent, Duan Jishuan would not allow the Black Armored Army to suffer unnecessary losses before they even entered the battlefield. Yes, the generals below the stage responded in unison. Among the ranks of the 2nd Battalion, dozens of soldiers couldn't help but have a slight change in expression. Their faces were filled with conflict and hesitation. Qiu Xingong, who was standing behind Duan Jishuan, had an indescribable look in his eyes. However, because he was standing at the back and was quite far away from Li Zishuan, no one noticed the abnormality in this old fellow's eyes. Regarding the rules of the fighting competition, all of you should have already heard of them. I won't repeat them. Today's fighting competition will be hosted by Li Kanjun. Now, the fighting competition officially begins. Duan Jishuan looked at the time and didn't waste any more words. He immediately announced the start of the fighting competition and handed over the hosting rights to Li Zishuan. After all, this fighting competition was something that Li Zishuan came up with. The rules were also set by Li Zishuan. For Li Zishuan to be the host was the most suitable. After Duan Jishuan finished speaking, he turned around and walked toward the back of the stage. Li Zishuan went to the position where Duan Jishuan was standing just now. Looking down at the neat formation of the 5 battalions, Li Zishuan took a deep breath and said, "According to the rules of the fighting competition, each battalion will nominate 20 experts to form teams of 5. Each team will be divided into 4 teams, and each team member will choose a team leader. There are a total of 20 teams from the 5 battalions of the Black Armored Army. The fighting competition will follow a step-by-step elimination system. There will be a total of 3 rounds: the preliminary round, the knockout round, and the final round. The team leader will draw lots to decide the opponent of each team. Every round will be a best of 5. The winner will advance, and the loser will be eliminated. In order to save time, the preliminary and knockout rounds of the fighting tournament will be held in 5 different locations at the same time. These 5 locations are where our 5 battalions usually train on the drill grounds. There will be 5 referees at the 5 locations to record the results of the matches. The final round will be held at the stage, and the final winner will be the champion of the fighting competition." Li Zishuan, Duan Jishuan, and Qiu Xingong had already discussed the rules of the Black Armored Army's fighting competition. Furthermore, the commanders of the various battalions had already informed their subordinates of the rules. On the Black Armor military drill ground, on the platform, Duan Jishuan's words set the tone for today's fighting competition. No one was allowed to intentionally injure or kill their opponents. This was to prevent some people from taking the opportunity to seek revenge. Now that the war between Tang and the Turks was imminent, Duan Jishuan would not allow the Black Armored Army to suffer unnecessary losses before they even entered the battlefield. Yes, the generals below the stage replied in unison. Now that the war between Tang and the Turks was imminent, Duan Jishuan would not allow the Black Armored Army to suffer unnecessary losses before they even entered the battlefield. Yes, the generals below the stage replied in unison. Now that the war between Tang and the Turks was imminent, Duan Jishuan would not allow the Black Armored Army to suffer unnecessary losses before they even entered the battlefield. Yes, the generals below the stage replied in unison. Chapter 2018. According to the rules of the martial arts tournament, each battalion had to send out 20 experts, which was equivalent to 4 small teams. These 4 teams would draw lots to determine their opponents in the preliminary round or the knockout round. Now was the preliminary round, and there were a total of 20 participating teams. Because the competition was using a single elimination system, Li Zishuan only allowed Team 1 and Team 2 of each battalion to come up and draw lots. The numbers of Team 3 and Team 4 of each battalion were written on the lots in the drawing tube. This meant that Team 1 and Team 2 from each battalion could only draw Team 3 and Team 4 from other battalions. It was impossible for them to draw Team 1 and 2 from other battalions. Of course, they could also draw Team 3 and Team 4 from their own battalions. In this way, there would only be a total of 10 matches in the preliminary round. According to a total of 5 competition venues, each venue would only have 2 matches. The winner would advance, while the loser would be directly eliminated. This greatly reduced the competition time. After all, the main focus of the various battalions was to intensify their training and prepare for the Turkic War. Li Zishuan and Duan Jishuan couldn't allow the martial arts tournament to take up too much of their training time. Although Qiu Xingong didn't learn new mathematics and didn't know much about probability theory and random events, he knew that the probability of the B battalion drawing Team 3 and Team 4 from the E battalion was relatively small. From a probability perspective, the probability of the B battalion drawing Team 3 and Team 4 from the E battalion was only 1 in 5. It was considered a small probability event. Thus, he ordered someone to secretly tamper with the numbers on the lots. At the end of the lots for Team 3 and Team 4 from the E battalion, there was a very shallow scratch that was hard to detect. As Li Zishuan's voice fell, 2 sergeants walked out from the formation of the 5 camps. Under the gazes of the crowd, the 10 sergeants came to the square table in order from the A camp to the E camp. They drew a bamboo stick and handed it to Li Zishuan. As Li Zishuan received the lot, he read it out loud. Team 1 from the A battalion against Team 3 from the B battalion. Team 2 from the A battalion against Team 4 from the E battalion. Actually, this order of drawing lots was extremely advantageous for the B battalion, because only the A battalion was in front of them, and the 2 captains of the A battalion had a relatively low chance of drawing the E battalion. When it was the turn of the B battalion captains to draw lots, they could directly draw the E battalion based on the secret mark on the bamboo lots. But Qiu Xingong didn't expect that this extremely low probability event would actually happen. The A battalion Team 2's captain drew Team 3 from the E battalion. In this way, in the preliminary round, it was very likely that only one team from the B battalion would be able to draw the E battalion. What was even worse was that Team 1 of the A battalion was actually matched up against Team 3 of the B battalion. In the Black Armored Army, the A battalion was publicly acknowledged as the strongest battalion. Qiu Xingong recognized the 5 soldiers of Team 1 of the A battalion. They were all experts of Qi, transforming middle stage, and above. Furthermore, they had all experienced hundreds of battles and were extremely experienced in battle. They could be considered as the hot favorites for this year's fighting competition. Team 3 of the B battalion was matched up against Team 1 of the A battalion. There was no doubt that Team 3 of the B battalion would be defeated. In other words, after this first round of the preliminary round, not only would the B battalion only be matched against the E battalion, one of the B battalion's teams would also be eliminated. To Qiu Xingong, this was a terrible result. While Qiu Xingong's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, the drawing of lots continued. Team 1 from the B Battalion against Team 3 from the E Battalion. Team 2 from the B Battalion against Team 3 from the A Battalion. Xiao Xingong didn't think much of the first line of information. After all, it was within Xiao Xingong's expectations. However, Li Zixuan's next line, 2nd Battalion, vs. A Battalion 3rd Battalion, almost caused Xiao Xingong to vomit blood. Did they have to be so unlucky? Not only did the B Battalion not meet all the E Battalion's teams, they even had 2 teams that met the A Battalion. If one had to describe Xiao Xingong's current state of mind, it would really be F** up. He even suspected that Li Zixuan had also done something to the drawing of lots. As for why he said, also, that was very thought-provoking. Even though he had his suspicions, he didn't have any proof. Furthermore, Xiao Xingong was also feeling guilty. Thus, he could only grit his teeth and swallow it down. However, with this, the B Battalion situation could be said to be worrisome. This was because 2 of the B Battalion's teams had already met the strong opponent, the A Battalion. Even though the A Battalion's 3rd team wasn't as strong as the A Battalion's 1st team, it was still a tough opponent. If the B Battalion's 1st team were to go up against it, it was hard to say who would win. Xiao Xingong, who had thought that everything was ready and that there would be a good opening, never expected that there would be such a bloody opening. After the first round of the preliminary round, it was very likely that 2 of the B Battalion's 4 teams would be eliminated directly. Moreover, it was very likely that they would only meet 1 team from the E Battalion. Chapter 2019. Following Li Zixuan's command, the preliminary round of the Black Armored Army's first combat competition officially began. The soldiers of each battalion returned to their usual training positions and formed a large circle. The empty space in the center of the circle was equivalent to a temporary arena for sparring. Baolin, Wang Ro, let's go. Let's go and meet our brothers from the 3rd Battalion. Cheng Chumo chuckled as he patted the shoulders of Yuchi Baolin, Wang Rong, and the others. As Qi Transformation Realm martial artists, although Cheng Chumo and Yuchi Baolin had just joined the 3rd Battalion, their strength was still there for all to see. Therefore, they successfully passed the selection and became the members of the 1st Battalion of the 5th Battalion. Although the rules of the fighting tournament did not explicitly state that each battalion had to place their strongest contestants in Team 1 or Team 2, but between the various battalions, they had already formed a kind of tacit understanding. Roughly speaking, within the main battalion, Team 1 was the strongest, Team 2 was 2nd, and Team 3 and Team 4 were ranked behind in that order. The reason for this tacit understanding was closely related to the rules of the combat competition. According to the rules of the competition, in the preliminary round, each battalion's 1st and 2nd battalions would select their own 3rd and 4th battalions as their opponents. The 1st and 2nd battalions of the other battalions would be the strongest team in the other battalions. If you placed your strongest team in the 3rd or 4th battalion, then wouldn't you have to go head-to-head with your opponents in the preliminary round? Even if you won in the clash, your contestants would be greatly exhausted and would most likely affect the next round of the competition. But if they lost in the clash, then wouldn't their strongest seeded team be eliminated in the preliminary round? Therefore, in order to let their own battalions go further, each battalion tacitly placed their strongest contestants in the 1st and 2nd battalions. On the side of the Wu Battalion, the members of Team 1 were Shen Mu, Cheng Chumo, Yuchi Baolin, Wang Rong, and Xiao Ming. The team leader was Shen Mu. Other than Cheng Chumo and Yuchi Baolin, the other 3 were all mid-level generals of the Wu Battalion. Shen Mu was the leader of Team 7, Wang Rong was the leader of Team 1, and Xiao Ming was the leader of Team 3. In fact, in the Wu Battalion, the strongest one should be Sun Jiping. But according to the rules of the competition, the captains of the different battalions were not allowed to participate in the competition. After all, the main purpose of the martial art competition was to encourage the soldiers to train well, not to let the captains of the different battalions fight each other. As for the Wu Battalion 1st team, Shen Mu was the leader not because he was the strongest, but because he was the only one who was smart and had decent martial arts skills among the five of them. In terms of strength, Wang Rong was actually stronger than him. The fighting competition wasn't just a contest of strength. It also required the use of strategies to arrange troops and formations. We must win the first round. Just now, Li Kanjun said that as long as we can enter the top 5, we can eat as much meat as we want in the next 7 days. Also, we can't let the other battalions look down on us. Our team must enter the top 5. Wang Rong waved his fist and said to Cheng Chumo and the rest as he walked towards the training ground of the Wu Battalion. As the seeded team of the Wu Battalion, the members of Team 1 were all Qi transforming beginner to middle stage Qi transforming stage experts. They were indeed the most promising team to enter the finals. If even they couldn't enter the finals, then the other 3 teams of the Wu Battalion would have no hope at all. At that time, if none of the 5 teams in the finals were from the Wu Battalion, then for a long time, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion wouldn't be able to raise their heads in front of the other battalions. Haha, Old Wang, I like what you said. We must enter the top 5. Only by entering the top 5 can we eat meat and be looked down upon by the other battalions. Cheng Chumo laughed loudly and said confidently. In the morning, Li Zexuan told him that the teams with good results would be rewarded handsomely. Cheng Chumo didn't expect that it would be such a reward. It was simply to his liking. With this, how could he not give his all in the following matches? Yes. We must enter the top 5. Yuchi Baolin followed closely behind and said with a determined face. To these two, the reward of unlimited meat was what attracted them the most. In order to be able to eat their fill in the military camp, they would give their all and defeat all the opponents in front of them. While they were talking, they had already arrived at the usual training location of the Wu Battalion on the drill ground. Standing beside Wang Rong was a 30-year-old soldier with a white face and no beard. At this moment, he was analyzing the situation with a calm face. He calmly analyzed, the members of the 4th team of the Wu Battalion are Xiang Peng, Wan Tao, Lu Bin, Zhang Dazhuang, and Ran Xiaodong. Other than their leader Xiang Peng, who is in the middle stage of the Qi transforming stage, the rest of them are like us, new recruits who have just joined the Black Armored Army. Furthermore, they're all below the initial stage of the Qi transforming stage. Therefore, we have a high chance of winning the first match. Later on, we will be on our home ground. According to the rules of the competition, we have to send out a person in the first round. I want Chumo to go first. As long as the opponent doesn't send out Xiang Peng first, I believe Chumo will be able to help us win the first round. If the opponent is Xiang Peng first, I suggest Chumo to admit defeat and preserve his strength. We will definitely be able to win the next 3 rounds. This person was Shun Mu, the leader of the 7th team of the Wu Battalion. He was also the leader of Cheng Chumo and the others in this year's combat competition. Although Shun Mu's martial strength was only in the early stage of the Qi transforming stage, he was a steady person who was good at strategizing. Therefore, Sun Jiping not only put him in the first team, but also made him the leader of the first team. Coincidentally, before coming to the Black Armored Army, Shun Mu used to be an adjutant of the 3rd Battalion of the Right Guards. He was well-versed in both the pen and the sword, and was highly regarded by Old Cheng. Now that he had left the Right Guards, Shun Mu didn't expect that he would become a comrade in the same battalion as his old superior, as Sun. Because of this relationship, Cheng Chumo didn't have the slightest bit of courtesy towards Shun Mu. Hearing what Shun Mu said, he glared at him and scolded angrily. Fuck! Shun Mu, what the hell are you saying? Why do I have to admit defeat when I meet Xiang Peng? So what if his cultivation level is higher than mine? So what if he has a higher cultivation level? So what if he can win? When Xiao Xian was still in the Qi transforming stage, didn't he also beat up that Snake King from the 7 Cultivators sect until he was looking for his teeth on the ground? I will be the first to go up. No matter who the opponent is, I will not admit defeat. We, the people of the Cheng family, don't know how to write the 2 words admit defeat. Cheng Chumo's words could be said to be rather unyielding, but Shun Mu felt a headache when he heard it. The reason why he arranged for Cheng Chumo to be the first to go up was, Firstly, because this kid was young and full of energy, even exuberant, so he could take it a few more times. Secondly, he also wanted to try his luck. If the first person from the 4th Battalion of the 3rd Battalion wasn't Xiang Peng, then they could use Cheng Chumo, who wasn't very strong, to take the first round. If they could use the 2 weaker contestants to take the next 2 rounds, then the remaining 2 stronger contestants would need to go up. This way, they could preserve their strength for the later rounds of the knockout round. Therefore, facing this first round where the odds of victory were very high, Shenmu's strategy was to preserve their strength as much as possible. As the captain, he couldn't only care about the victory or defeat in front of him. If their team wanted to advance to the finals, then they must carefully plan and reasonably allocate the number of matches for each member. Of course, if the opponent's first to go up was Xiang Peng, then Shenmu could also accept it. After all, his team could be considered to have used their weakest member, cough cough. That's right, from the surface, Cheng Chumo was indeed the weakest in their team. After using up the opponent's strongest member's number of matches, they would have a greater chance of winning the next 3 rounds in a row. The reason he let Cheng Chumo directly admit defeat when facing Xiang Peng was to let Cheng Chumo preserve his strength. Alright then, but Chumo, you still have to act according to your ability. You must not get injured in the first round. Facing the stubborn Cheng Chumo, who was as stubborn as a bull, Shenmu didn't have any good ideas and could only nod helplessly. Hey, we still don't know who will get injured. Old Shen, you just wait and see. Cheng Chumo patted Shenmu's shoulder and said loudly, All right, stop bragging. The brothers from the 3rd Battalion are coming. Chapter 2020. Actually, Team 1 and Team 2 had another advantage, and that was the home field advantage. Because according to the rules of the competition, in the preliminary stage, no matter which team the first or second team of each battalion drew, the competition venue would be the location of the training ground of each battalion. The surrounding spectators were naturally all brothers of the main battalion, so the atmosphere was undoubtedly more friendly. As for the members of Team 3 and Team 4, unless they were lucky enough to be drawn by Team 1 and 2, they would have to go to the opponent's territory to compete. At that time, they would be surrounded by the opponent's soldiers, and naturally, there would be no one to cheer for them. The atmosphere of the competition would be quite bad. It was because of this competition system that the commanders of each battalion would arrange the strongest contestants in their respective battalions to be in Team 1 and 2, in order to let their battalions go further in the fighting competition. However, could Team 1 and Team 2 really win against Team 3 and Team 4? Of course not. Since ancient times, all kinds of competitions had a certain degree of uncertainty. But due to the difference in strength between the two parties, the degree of uncertainty would also be different. The competition system of the Black Armored Army seemed to give Team 1 and Team 2 an advantage, but there was also a lot of uncertainty in it. On the side of the Wu Battalion, the 2 teams for the first round were already in position. The first team of the Wu Battalion sent Cheng Chumo out first. As for the 4th team of the 3rd Battalion, it was obvious that they had done their homework beforehand. Cough, cough. It wasn't completely accurate. The former lieutenant of the 3rd Battalion, Zhang Kongyan, had already been executed for inciting the soldiers to mutiny. The current lieutenant of the 3rd Battalion was Li Zishuan. As for the strength of the members of the first team of the Wu Battalion, Li Zishuan had already informed Xiang Peng of the 4th Battalion of the 3rd Battalion about the general situation after the results of the draw. Although from a selfish point of view, Li Zishuan really hoped that the Wu Battalion would go to the end. After all, to him, the Wu Battalion was his direct line of command. But from a status point of view, Li Zishuan was an adjutant of the Black Armored Army, and now he was the lieutenant of the 3rd Battalion. The soldiers of both battalions could be considered as his subordinates, so he had to be impartial. When Xiang Peng saw that Cheng Chumo was the first to step onto the field, he hesitated for a moment, then said to a slightly skinny young soldier beside him, "Le Bin, you go up and meet Duke Lu's eldest son. The competition is like a battlefield. There's no need to show mercy. It's fine as long as you don't kill anyone." Through the information he got from Li Zishuan, Xiang Peng knew that Chung Chumo was the weakest in the first team of the Wu Battalion. He had just broken through to the Qi transformation stage. Therefore, after seeing that Chung Chumo was the first to go up, Xiang Peng pondered for a moment. In the end, he didn't go up himself. Instead, he sent a young general. From Xiang Peng's point of view, if he were to personally fight against Chung Chumo, his side would definitely be able to win the first round. However, his side had exhausted one of their strongest combatants. Facing the remaining 4 strong opponents of the first team of the Wu Battalion, his side would probably lose the next few rounds. Therefore, after careful consideration, Xiang Peng still didn't go up himself. Instead, he sent Lu Bin, who was ranked 3rd on his side. Although Lu Bin hadn't reached the Qi transformation stage yet, he wasn't far from it. In addition, he had been in the army for many years and had undergone a lot of rigorous training. From Xiang Peng's point of view, he still had a chance to win against Chung Chumo. If Lu Bin could win the first round, then the 4th team of the 3rd Battalion still had a certain chance of winning. If Lu Bin lost the first round, then their team's future would be uncertain. Therefore, this first round might be insignificant to the first team of the Wu Battalion. It would be better if they won, but it wouldn't affect them much if they lost. However, to the 4th team of the 3rd Battalion, this was a crucial battle that would determine their life and death. Tisk, Xiang Peng, why don't you come and fight with me personally? This guy can't beat me. Seeing that the 4th team of the 3rd Battalion didn't send Xiang Peng, but a young general, Chung Chumo couldn't help but feel disappointed. He curled his lips and said to Xiang Peng with an arrogant face, "Umph, arrogant. We'll only know who wins after we fight." Before Xiang Peng could say anything, Lu Bin, who had just walked to the opposite side of Chung Chumo, couldn't hold back his anger. He waved his fist and smashed it towards Chung Chumo's body. The Black Armored Army's combat competition didn't allow the use of weapons. From Lu Bin's point of view, Chung Chumo was born in a noble family and had lived a life of luxury since young. Although his father, Chung Chumo, was a founding general who had experienced countless battles, Chung Chumo was still a new recruit who hadn't experienced much hardship. Lu Bin himself had stayed in the military for 4 to 5 years. The hardships and training he had experienced were much more than Chung Chumo. Even if Chung Chumo's cultivation level was slightly higher than his, he still had the chance to defeat him with his rich combat experience. Actually, it wasn't a problem for him to think this way, because in the current 2nd generation of the Tang Dynasty's military families, there wasn't a single one that could be brought out. Most of them relied on the shadow of the previous generation to make a name for themselves in the capital. However, what Lu Bin didn't know was that Chung Chumo had been trained by the bearded man in Yanhuang College for more than half a year. It was because of this half a year of training that Chung Chumo was able to break through from the body refining realm to the Qi transformation realm. Hee, you're quite fast, but your strength isn't up to par. Feeling a gust of wind coming at him, Chung Chumo narrowed his eyes and his expression turned serious. He took a few steps back, then extended his right hand and clenched his fist into a palm. Lu Bin instantly felt as if his fist had smashed into a steel plate. Of course, Chung Chumo wasn't using Tai Chi against an opponent like Lu Bin, who was weaker than him on the surface. He didn't intend to use Tai Chi to subdue strength with gentleness. He wanted to fight Lu Bin head-on. That way, it would be more satisfying. Haha, it's my turn. After Chung Chumo wrapped his palm around Lu Bin's fist, he turned around and placed Lu Bin's right arm on his shoulder. He directly threw Lu Bin over his shoulder, intending to throw Lu Bin onto his back. There were no fist techniques, moves, nor was there a competition of internal energy. It was purely a contest of physical strength. Chung Chumo intended to use this simple and primitive method to defeat his opponent. If he didn't do this, he would feel that he had an unfair advantage. After all, his martial arts strength was one realm higher than Lu Bin's. Lu Bin, who had already been thrown into the air by Chung Chumo, was shocked by Chung Chumo's strength. After all, to be able to have such strength, he didn't seem like an ordinary pampered aristocrat. On the other hand, Lu Bin was angered by Chung Chumo's contempt. He groaned, and used his left hand to grab Cheng Chumo's right arm. He used the force to twist his body, then fiercely stomped on Cheng Chumo's shoulder. Using the rebound force, he broke free from Cheng Chumo's control and flew backwards. "Hey, this is interesting." Cheng Chumo grinned. Lu Bin's kick just now was mainly to escape and not to injure Cheng Chumo. In fact, after more than half a year of training by the bearded guest, and after following Li Zixuan into the Black Armored Army, Cheng Chumo's current physical strength was not inferior to most of the soldiers in the Black Armored Army. Again, shaking his shoulders, Cheng Chumo faced Lu Bin, arched his body, and put on full alert. He shouted arrogantly. After just 2 rounds of fighting, he could already tell that although Lu Bin's martial strength was not as good as his flexibility and ability to adapt on the spot in real combat were miles ahead of him. Under such circumstances, Cheng Chumo did not take the initiative to attack. He felt that it was necessary for him to play to his strengths and avoid his weaknesses. By provoking his opponent to take the initiative to attack, he would seize the opportunity and find his weakness. It was said that the old Cheng family was brainless, but that was not the case. Like Cheng Chumo, there were many times when Cheng Chumo was just too lazy to use his brain. As expected, seeing that Cheng Chumo was still hooting, how could the young and hot-blooded Lu Bin hold himself back? He shouted loudly and disappeared from his original position. The next moment, his 2 feet appeared diagonally above Cheng Chumo's head. Everything happened too quickly. An ordinary person would not have been able to react in time and would have been kicked in the face by Lu Bin. However, Cheng Chumo was not an ordinary person. He was already on guard against Lu Bin. The moment Lu Bin disappeared from his original position, his eyes had already locked onto him. "Hey, now you have nowhere to run, right?" Cheng Chumo laughed proudly. He, who was already prepared, stretched out his hands like lightning and grabbed Lu Bin's ankles. Lu Bin could not help but panic. However, he was in the air and his feet were grabbed by someone else. There was no way for him to borrow strength. He could only let Cheng Chumo grab his ankles and throw him out fiercely. Was he going to lose just like that? No, absolutely not. Lu Bin, who was extremely unwilling to admit defeat, made an extremely difficult move at the moment when Cheng Chumo released his hands and threw him out. That was, he used his legs to clamp onto Cheng Chumo's wrist before he could retract it. His movement was very fast. It was almost completed the moment Cheng Chumo released his hands. However, due to the lack of time, although he used his ankles to clamp onto Cheng Chumo's wrist, he still could not resist the huge inertia of his body flying out. Therefore, he only paused in the air for a moment before his whole body flew out. However, it was precisely because of that short pause that he was not directly thrown out of the arena. Instead, he landed on the edge of the arena that had been marked out in advance and stopped his momentum. Since he was not thrown out, the competition would continue. Cheng Chumo did not expect his opponent to be so tenacious. He was a little surprised and could not help but become more serious. "Hey, if you ask me, you should just admit defeat. You can't beat me anyway." Cheng Chumo did not chase after him. Instead, he stood where he was and waited for his opponent to stand up. At this time, he spoke. It was not a taunt, but a very sincere suggestion. "Thank you for your kindness. You are indeed very strong, but I will not admit defeat so easily." Lu Bin stood up and wiped the trace of blood from the corner of his mouth. Then, he said with a serious face, after the fight just now, he also understood that Cheng Chumo's strength was indeed above his. However, he was unwilling to admit defeat because he could learn a lot from fighting with such an opponent. At this time, his mentality had changed. He originally wanted to win, but now he wanted to use this opportunity to learn martial arts. Good. Since you like my temper, let's fight to our heart's content today." Cheng Chumo laughed loudly. Lu Bin's character of not easily admitting defeat was very similar to his. Cheng Chumo was suddenly interested and wanted to fight to his heart's content. Happy to oblige, Lu Bin smiled knowingly and took the initiative to attack again. The following fight was much more interesting because there was no dodging back and forth. It was all fist-to-fist fighting. Not only were the surrounding soldiers very satisfied, but Chung Chumo and Lu Bin were also very satisfied. However, after all, Chung Chumo's strength was higher and his physique was better. After falling to the ground for the 8th time, Lu Bin finally could not hold on anymore. "I admit defeat." Lu Bin, who could not get up, simply lay on the ground and said weakly, "First round of the preliminary round. Team 1 of the Wu Battalion wins." A soldier from Xiao Xinggong's personal guard, who was acting as the temporary referee, quickly shouted at this time, "Oh, we won. Let's take down a city first." The surrounding soldiers of the Wu Battalion burst into cheers. Shen Mu, Wang Rong, and the rest also heaved a sigh of relief. Chung Chumo grinned, wiped the sweat on his face with his sleeve, and then walked towards Lu Bin, who was lying on the ground. Although the kid's martial arts were not as good as his temperament was very similar. But speaking of which, if it wasn't for the life-threatening training in the past few days, he would not have been able to endure the previous fight. After all, ever since the bearded man left the academy to go out to sea, his martial arts had been neglected for a long time. After entering the Black Armored Army, the continuous training, especially the very targeted training programs in Li Zixuan's new drill manual, not only had his recently broken-through state become more stable, his body also became stronger. Chapter 2021. While Chung Chumo and Lu Bin were battling, the other 4 battalions of the Black Armored Army were also engaged in intense battles. In the training grounds of the 2nd Battalion, Yuan Deshang from the 1st Battalion of the 2nd Battalion and Lu Ming from the 4th Battalion of the 5th Battalion went up for the first round. As a member of the seeded team of the 2nd Battalion, Yuan Deshang was a martial arts expert at the middle stage of the Qi transforming stage. On the other hand, Lu Ming from the 4th Battalion of the 5th Battalion was only at the early stage of the Qi transforming stage. In fact, the 5 members of the 2nd Battalion's 1st Battalion were all experts in the middle stage of the Qi transforming stage. The fact that the 2nd Battalion had so many top experts was largely due to the fact that there were many veterans of the Black Armored Army. It had been more than 10 years since the Black Armored Army was established by Li Zixuan. In these 10 years, the Black Armored Army had followed Li Zixuan on many expeditions and had experienced countless battles. Although there had been constant additions and losses, the total number of Black Armored Army members had always been fixed at around 3,000. Therefore, the Black Armored Army members who were able to survive countless dangerous battles, excluding the element of luck, most of them had outstanding martial arts skills and rich battle experience. It could also be said that every veteran of the Black Armored Army was a treasure. Yuan Deshang had been in the Black Armored Army for 5 to 6 years and was considered one of the most experienced members of the Black Armored Army. Of course, he was also very capable. In terms of martial arts, Yuan Deshang could be considered the strongest in the 2nd Battalion's 1st Battalion. Therefore, he was also the leader of the 2nd Battalion's 1st Battalion. Speaking of the 5th Battalion's 4th Battalion's Lu Ming, he was actually not that famous in the Black Armored Army. However, in the 5th Battalion, almost everyone knew him. This was because he was the chief cook of the 5th Battalion's Cook's Army. He and his subordinates were in charge of the daily meals of the entire 5th Battalion. As a cook soldier, Lu Ming was not only a good cook, his martial arts skills were also not bad. Not only did he register for this year's fighting competition, he was also the leader of the 4th Battalion's 3rd Battalion. For the first round, Yuan Deshang had actually personally come out to fight for the 2nd Battalion. Lu Ming knew clearly that no one on his side was a match for Yuan Deshang. As the leader, he could only brace himself and go up personally to meet the strongest member of the opposing team. No matter if it was the 2nd Battalion or the other members of the 5th Battalion, no one had any hope for Lu Ming. Everyone thought that Lu Ming would definitely lose. Lu Ming also thought so. However, he didn't intend to admit defeat directly. Not to mention that the 5th Battalion had some conflicts with the 2nd Battalion. Even if there were no conflicts between the 2 battalions, he didn't have any reason to admit defeat directly, because that would hurt the morale of his own people. Lu Ming entered the arena with the mentality of learning martial arts. Of course, winning or losing was important, but now that he knew that the chance of winning was very slim, he only wanted to improve himself through this competition and show off his skills. At least, he didn't want to bring shame to the Wu Battalion. Yuan Deshang, on the other hand, had a special mission. As soon as the two sides exchanged blows, Lu Ming felt that something was wrong. This was because he could vaguely feel a trace of murderous aura from Yuan Deshang. Although Lu Ming was only a Cook's Army unit soldier, he was still considered a veteran. Before he joined the Black Armored Army, he was one of the Zhuo Wuwei's men and had been on many battlefields. Towards something as intangible as murderous aura, he could still feel it. Although each of Yuan Deshang's moves and styles looked very sparse and ordinary, Lu Ming found that there was a lot of hidden power hidden in Yuan Deshang's moves. He only took 2 moves, but he was almost shocked to the point of vomiting blood. As a result, he didn't dare to take Yuan Deshang's moves head-on anymore. He could only rely on his body movements to dodge as much as possible. Of course, if there was a good opportunity, he would also seize it and attack. Lu Ming couldn't understand why Yuan Deshang would use these seemingly ordinary but actually deadly, insidious moves. Of course, he didn't have the time to think about this at this moment. He had to focus all of his energy on dodging Yuan Deshang's attacks. Although the situation was very dangerous, and there were a few times where Yuan Deshang's moves had brushed past his face, Lu Ming still didn't have the intention to admit defeat. He couldn't bring shame to the Wu Battalion. Something's not right. Why isn't Lu Ming attacking? Why is he dodging? The other 4 members of the Wu Battalion's 4th platoon were watching the situation in the arena closely. At this moment, one of the soldiers couldn't help but say, Chapter 2022. What is going on? On the drill ground of the Black Armored Army's camp, Qiu Xingong frowned as he saw the members of the 2nd Battalion surrounding the members of the 4th Battalion of the 5th Battalion. Look of displeasure. Yuan Deshang hurriedly walked up to Qiu Xingong in fear and trepidation. He bowed and cupped his fists. General, it's my fault. I didn't control myself during the competition and accidentally hurt Brother Lu Ming of the Wu Battalion. I'm willing to accept any punishment. Take note that Yuan Deshang said that he was willing to accept his punishment, not that he was willing to accept his punishment. He was intentionally trying to simplify the situation. Bullshit. You were the one who purposely hit him hard and wanted to kill him. If we didn't stop you just now, would you have killed Lu Ming in front of us? Old Zhou and Zhou Erfu of the 4th Battalion couldn't help but reprimand him. As for the judge, he had already run out with another member of the 4th Battalion of the 5th Battalion to find a military doctor after roughly checking Lu Ming's injuries. Qiu Xingong lowered his head and looked at the unconscious Lu Ming, who was lying on the ground covered in blood. As an experienced soldier, he could naturally tell that Lu Ming's injuries were very serious. Even if he could be saved, it would take at least 10 days to half a month for him to recover. Thus, a hint of pride flashed across Qiu Xingong's eyes. Then, he raised his head and looked at Zhou Erfu sternly. He said in a deep voice, You are from the 5th Battalion? You can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. In a military competition, fists and kicks have no eyes. Injuries are unavoidable. Why did you say that it was intentional fratricide between fellow soldiers? Do you know that your words will affect the unity of the soldiers? On the surface, Qiu Xingong was here to stop the fight, but anyone with a discerning eye could tell that this old man was siding with Zhou Erfu. He didn't say anything and directly settled the matter. He even labeled Zhou Erfu as a disloyal soldier. Zhou Erfu was furious, but no matter what, Qiu Xingong was his superior. He didn't dare to scold him like how he scolded Yuan Deshang. Otherwise, Qiu Xingong would definitely accuse him of being disrespectful to the general. Zhou Erfu took a deep breath and said, General Qiu, everyone saw clearly what happened just now. Yuan Deshang had already seriously injured Lu Ming and made him lose the ability to fight back. However, he didn't stop and continued to attack Lu Ming. If we didn't stop him, Lu Ming would have been killed by him. Old Zhou is right. Yuan Deshang definitely didn't make a mistake by accident. He did it on purpose. He has to give us an explanation for this. Fang Yong stood up and said with grief and indignation. That was because he had seen Lu Ming's injuries earlier. The latter had suffered severe internal injuries and external injuries. Currently, his breathing was extremely weak. Yuan Deshang hurriedly cupped his fists and explained to Qiu Xingong, General Qiu, your subordinate has been wronged. Your subordinate did not intentionally injure anyone. During the competition just now, your subordinate was wholeheartedly seeking victory, but I did not expect Brother Lu Ming to be so. So I was a little heavy-handed, Yuan Deshang wanted to say. I didn't expect Lu Ming to be so weak, but he was afraid that saying that would anger Fang Yong, Zhou Erfu, and the others even more. Therefore, he swallowed the words that were at the tip of his tongue. Qiu Xingong nodded and secretly thought that this Yuan Deshang was a moldable talent. He looked at Fang Yong and Zhou Erfu and said in a deep voice, the truth is already very clear. Yuan Deshang only accidentally injured someone. The two of you should stop pestering and talking nonsense here. The most important thing now is to let the military doctor carry Lu Ming away as soon as possible and then continue the competition. Don't let this small misunderstanding affect the progress of today's fighting competition. Otherwise, even if I can forgive you, Instructor Li and General Duan will not let you off so easily. Misunderstanding? A person almost died. How can this be considered a misunderstanding? Just as Qiu Xingong was about to conclude the matter, a cold voice sounded from outside the crowd. Although the voice wasn't loud, it was clearly heard by everyone present. The surrounding 2nd Battalion soldiers automatically opened up a path, and a handsome young general walked in. Qiu Xingong squinted his eyes and said calmly, That's right, I'm not going to give you a chance to get out of here. Instructor Li, what do you mean by that? The person who walked in was Li Zishuan. After the fighting competition officially started, Li Zishuan and Duan Jishuan left the general appointment stage and went to each battalion to inspect the situation of the competition. Li Zishuan went to the 5th Battalion first, but when he saw Lu Bin of the 3rd Battalion taking the initiative to attack, he predicted that Cheng Chumo would definitely win this round. Therefore, he left the 5th Battalion's field and headed to the 2nd Battalion's field. This was because the 2nd Battalion had 2 teams fighting at the same time in the first round. One was the 1st Battalion of the 5th Battalion, and the other was the 4th Battalion of the 5th Battalion. The 4th Battalion of the 5th Battalion would be fighting against the 1st Battalion of the 2nd Battalion. From Li Zishuan's point of view, the 1st Battalion of the 5th Battalion would most likely be able to make it to the knockout stage. The one he really needed to worry about was the 4th Battalion of the 5th Battalion, because the opponent of the 4th Battalion of the 5th Battalion was too strong. But he had never expected that, just as he neared the 2nd Battalion grounds, he would hear the sounds of quarreling over here. Li Zishuan hurriedly quickened his footsteps and walked into the crowd. Of course, Li Zishuan had also roughly heard the conversation between Fang Yong, Zhou Erfu, Yuan Deshang, and Qiu Xingong earlier. From these few words, he could be considered to have a preliminary understanding of the ins and outs of the matter. What I mean is, whether this Yuan Deshang is guilty or not, General Qiu and I don't have the final say. Whether he intentionally harmed others or not, we need to investigate clearly before we can make a conclusion. General Qiu and I are the same. We didn't see what happened with our own eyes. So how can we make a conclusion so easily? Before the competition, General Qiu had ordered that the soldiers were not allowed to use the competition as an excuse to maliciously injure or even kill people. But in the first round of the competition, such a vile incident occurred in the 2nd Battalion. This incident must be investigated clearly. His own soldier was injured. Li Zishuan's chest was filled with anger. But he knew that he had to remain calm and not lose his rationality. Otherwise, not only would he not be able to seek justice for Lu Ming, he would also leave a weakness for Qiu Xingong to use against him. He took 2 deep breaths, looked straight at Qiu Xingong, and said mercilessly, You? Qiu Xingong was extremely angry. If it was in the past, no one in the Black Armored Army would dare to speak to him like this. It had to be said that ever since Li Zishuan entered the Black Armored Army, He had been testing the limits of his patience time and time again. Li Zishuan didn't have the mood to continue wasting his breath on Qiu Xingong. He also didn't care how Qiu Xingong would react after hearing his words. After saying that, he walked directly towards Lu Ming, who was lying on the ground. Sergeant Li. When Fang Yong, Zhou Erfu, and the rest saw Li Zishuan walking over, it was as if they had seen their pillar of support. Even though Qiu Xingong's words were harsh, they could only swallow it because of their status and environment. Now that Li Zishuan was here, they finally had a pillar of support. Although this young man in front of them was young and had only joined the Black Armored Army for a short period of time, he could support them and seek justice for the injured Lu Ming. Let me take a look at his injuries. Li Zishuan could see the grievances and anger in their eyes. He patted their shoulders as a form of consolation and said. The three of them immediately stepped aside. Li Zishuan squatted beside Lu Ming. Upon closer inspection, his expression suddenly changed. He saw that the latter's eyes were tightly shut. The corners of his mouth, chin, and chest were covered in blood and bloody foam. The ground around him had even sunk a little. From this, it could be seen how fast Lu Ming had fallen and how serious the impact was when he hit the ground. Medic, get out of the way. The medic is here. Just as Li Zishuan was about to remove Lu Ming's armor to check his injuries, a hurried voice came from outside the crowd. Li Zishuan stood up and saw two soldiers hurrying over with an old man in a scholarly robe and two young men in green robes. After being in the military camp for so many days, Li Zishuan knew this old man. His name was Si Kong Yi, and he was from the Imperial Medical Department. The Black Armor Army had more than a dozen medics under his management. Mr. Si Kong, please take a look at Brother Lu Ming. Li Zishuan cupped his hands and said to Si Kong Yi. Although he had regained some of the memories of his predecessor, his medical experience was definitely far inferior to this old man in front of him. As the saying goes, brainstorming is beneficial. Now that Lu Ming's injuries were extremely serious, if the two of them could work together, the chances of successfully saving Lu Ming would be higher. Sikong, he looked like a very dedicated doctor. Without any nonsense, he squatted down and began to carefully examine Lu Ming's injuries. At this time, Li Zishuan looked at the referee who brought Sikong Yi over. Of course, he knew this person, so he asked, Deng Kong, what happened just now? Tell me the truth. Don't hide anything. Deng Kong didn't belong to any of the 5 battalions of the Black Armored Army. He was Duan Jishuan's personal guard. In fact, all the referees today were Duan Jishuan's personal guards. The reason for this was to ensure that these referees were fair and just. At this moment, the reason why Li Zishuan didn't ask Fang Yong, Zhou Erfu, and the other members of the 4th Platoon of the 5th Battalion, but Deng Kong instead, was to shut Qiu Xingong's mouth in advance. Otherwise, that old bastard would say that Fang Yong and the others were deliberately adding fuel to the fire because of their own selfish motives. Yes, adjunctly. Deng Kong looked at Qiu Xingong hesitantly. After hesitating for a moment, he finally made a decision. He cupped his hands and said to Li Zishuan, just now, while Li Zishuan was questioning Deng Kong, the news of Lu Ming being seriously injured by Yuan Desheng had already spread to the 5th Battalion. Cheng Chimo had just come down from the arena. After hearing the news, this idiot was instantly enraged. Fuck, those bastards from the 2nd Battalion are too much of a bully. They took advantage of the competition to attack Old Lu. Damn it, Old Lu was seriously injured in the 2nd Battalion. Brothers, follow me to the 2nd Battalion to F***CK up Yuan Desheng. Chapter 2023. Although Cheng Chumo had only joined the Wu Battalion for a short time, he was born with the personality of being able to get along well with anyone. In addition to his special identity as the son of Lu Guogong, many people in the Wu Battalion used to be Cheng Chumo's subordinates. Therefore, although Cheng Chumo had only joined the Wu Battalion for a short time, he was already very familiar with most of the soldiers in the Wu Battalion. As for Lu Ming, when Cheng Chumo was assigned by Li Zishuan to help in the kitchen, he had interacted with Lu Ming before. Lu Ming was a generous and straightforward person, which was very similar to Cheng Chumo's temperament. In addition, Lu Ming and his cook's army unit had contributed 3 meals a day to the soldiers in the Wu Battalion. To these soldiers, what was the most important thing? Filling their stomachs every day was the most important thing. Whether Cheng Chumo and the other soldiers could fill their stomachs or not was directly related to the cook's army unit. Now that Lu Ming was seriously injured, not only could Cheng Chumo not tolerate it, the other soldiers in the Wu Battalion also couldn't tolerate it. What? Fire Master Lu had been severely injured by the 2nd Battalion? Mother asterisk her, those bastards in the 2nd Battalion. Let's go and take revenge for Fire Master Lu. Revenge? We must take revenge. Does the 2nd Battalion think that our brothers in the Wu Battalion are easy to bully? Mother asterisk her, how dare they injure Fire Master Lu? Isn't this destroying our jobs? Brothers, let's go to the 2nd Battalion and F***CK Yuan to Shang. Because Cheng Chumo's voice was loud, and because the first round of the competition had just ended, the soldiers here weren't cheering for their brothers like before. The surrounding environment was relatively quiet. So many people heard Cheng Chumo's loud roar. As a result, more and more soldiers in the Wu Battalion heard the news that Lu Ming was seriously injured. In a moment, the soldiers in the Wu Battalion were enraged, and they all wanted to go to the 2nd Battalion to settle the score with Yuan to Shang. All of you, stop right there. Seeing that the situation was getting out of control, Sun Jiping had no choice but to stand up and block the path of Cheng Chumo and the others, shouting loudly to stop them. He was also to blame for this. Just now, he was standing too close to Cheng Chumo. When a soldier came to report to him that Lu Ming was severely injured, Cheng Chumo heard everything clearly. Cheng Chumo was a hot-tempered person who would explode at the slightest touch. When he heard this news, he was instantly enraged. With his loud voice, more than half of the soldiers of the Wu Battalion knew about this news. Plus, Lu Ming's identity was special, and he had a good relationship with the people in the 5th Battalion. Therefore, Sun Jiping didn't find it strange at all that the soldiers were clamoring to avenge Lu Ming. Officer Sun, what do you mean by this? Why are you stopping us? Cheng Chumo was not afraid of anything. When he saw Sun Jiping blocking their way, old Cheng immediately glared at him with displeasure. He had a look that said, "If you don't like what you say, I'll F***CK you up." Sun Jiping wasn't scared. Hearing this, he glared at Cheng Chumo and the soldiers behind him. He shouted in a deep voice, "Cheng Chumo, what are you doing? Are you trying to gather people to fight or mutiny? This is the military camp, not outside. The country has its laws, and the army has its rules. Whether Yuan to Shang is in the wrong or not, it's not up to you to cause trouble in the 2nd Battalion. Adjunct Li and General Duan will investigate and give Lu Ming justice." Seeing that Sun Jiping mentioned Li Zishuan, Cheng Chumo and the other soldiers of the 5th Battalion had no choice but to suppress the anger in their hearts. Because for now, Li Zishuan still had absolute prestige in the 5th Battalion. Then we can't just stand by and watch Firehead Lu get bullied, right? Cheng Chumo was not convinced, but his tone wasn't as aggressive as before. Sun Jiping said with a serious face, "Do you know why Lu Ming got injured?" Lu Ming knew that his opponent was stronger than him, but he didn't lose immediately, because he knew that he was representing the 5th Battalion in this battle, and he got injured for the honor of the 5th Battalion. If you rush to the 2nd Battalion to settle the score with Yuan de Shang, you will make the 5th Battalion bear the crime of gathering people to fight. You will bring shame to the entire 2nd Battalion. All of you stay here and fight well. As for the 2nd Battalion, I will personally go there. This general will personally seek justice for Lu Ming." Sun Jiping's words were righteous, reasonable, and powerful. In addition, he had already mentioned Li Zishuan. Only then did the restless soldiers of the 5th Battalion calm down. Cheng Chumo said to Sun Jiping, "Lieutenant Sun, since I'm done with the battle, I'll go with you. If those bastards from the 2nd Battalion want to use violence against you, I can at least help them, right?" Cheng Chumo knew clearly that the 2nd Battalion was under Qiu Xingong's protection. Yuan de Shang might have been under Qiu Xingong's orders to injure Lu Ming. Even if that wasn't the case, Qiu Shinggong would still side with the 2nd Battalion soldiers. If Qiu Shinggong used his status to pressure Sun Jiping, then things wouldn't be good. Other people might be afraid of Qiu Shinggong, but Cheng Chimo wasn't, because his father was the devil incarnate. As long as he didn't violate the military rules, Qiu Shinggong wouldn't dare to do anything to him. All right, then Chimo, you will follow me. Sun Jiping pondered for a moment and understood the crux of the matter. He nodded his head and replied. Soon, the two of them left the training grounds of the 5th Battalion and walked quickly towards the 2nd Battalion training grounds. Physician Sikong, how is his injury? On the other side, Li Zishuan saw Sikong stand up and quickly asked. It was worth mentioning that when Sikong was treating Lu Ming, Duan Jishuan also rushed over. Sikong looked at Li Zishuan and Duan Jishuan with a serious face, and then quickly said, his injury is very serious. His abdomen is severely injured. His liver, spleen, stomach, kidneys, and other organs were all displaced due to the huge impact. There are more than 10 fractures on his back. Luckily, this kid's body is strong and his spine wasn't broken. Otherwise, even the gods wouldn't be able to save him. I need a few people to carry him to the tent and immediately treat him. Although he can be saved, but with such serious injuries, I'm afraid he won't be able to recover without 1 or 2 months. Hearing this, Fang Yong, Zhou Erfu, and the other soldiers of the 5th Battalion all had red eyes and stared at Yuan Deshang with hatred. Li Zishuan secretly clenched his fist. Although his medical skills were good, he didn't have any special methods to treat Lu Ming's external and internal injuries. Sikong was confident that he could cure Lu Ming's injuries, which was already considered a blessing in disguise. Forcefully suppressing the anger in his chest, Li Zishuan didn't wait for Duan Jishuan's order and spoke first. Fang Yong, Zhou Erfu, help physician Sikong carry Lu Ming away for treatment. Be careful. Lu Ming had already suffered such serious injuries. He definitely couldn't suffer any more injuries. Therefore, Li Zishuan could only let his own people handle this matter. Yes, join the army. The two cupped their fists and accepted the order. Very quickly, they brought over a door plank. With the help and guidance of the 2 military doctors, they carefully carried Lu Ming onto the plank. Then, they carried the unconscious Lu Ming and the door plank out of the drill ground. Now, General Qiu, do you still think that Yuan Deshang accidentally injured Lu Ming? After settling Lu Ming down, Li Zishuan directly looked at Qiu Shinggong and said. His eyes were very calm, but this was only the calm before the storm. Behind the calm, there was endless anger. Chapter 2024. What are you talking about, Adjunct Li? The details of what had happened were very clear. Yuan Deshang was determined to win the competition. After he injured Lu Ming with one move, he didn't know if Lu Ming still had the strength to fight. So he took advantage of the situation to pursue and attack, causing Lu Ming to be seriously injured. This was an unintentional mistake caused by Yuan Deshang's desire to win. If this was considered a mistake, then who would dare to go all out in the following matches? What's the point of the Black Armored Army holding a martial arts competition? Moreover, Lieutenant Li, you have said before that you would rather the soldiers sweat more and get more injuries on the training ground than die on the battlefield. Why do you still want to pester us endlessly when the soldiers of the V Battalion are injured? In the Black Armored Army drill ground, Qiu Shinggong had already thought of an excuse when faced with Li Zishuan's challenge. He looked at Li Zishuan and said righteously, without any change in his expression. The old man's words didn't sound wrong at first. He even used Li Zishuan's words to attack Li Zishuan's shield with his spear. He was indeed a cunning old fox. In fact, it was easy to find the loopholes in Qiu Shinggong's words. In a battle between warriors, as long as it wasn't a battle of life and death involving personal grudges, they would usually have a sense of propriety. Now that Lu Ming was seriously injured, it meant that Yuan Deshang not only didn't have a sense of propriety, but also wanted to kill Lu Ming on purpose. As for what Qiu Shinggong said about accidentally injuring someone, that was even more nonsense and sophistry. As a Qi transformation realm martial artist, their control over their strength was far beyond the reach of ordinary people. Ordinary people might accidentally injure their opponent in a fight, but a Qi transformation realm martial artist had a relatively accurate estimation of the power of their every move and the damage they could cause. As long as they didn't want to injure or kill their opponent on their own accord, it was basically very difficult for accidents to occur. Yuan Deshang's final attack, after injuring Lu Ming, was impossible to be an unintentional mistake. It was also not in line with the spirit of stopping when the time is right that Duan Jishuan said at the beginning of the martial arts competition. However, both Qiu Xingong and Yuan Deshang insisted that it was an accident, and there was no direct evidence to prove that Yuan Deshang did it on purpose. Therefore, it was hard to conclude this matter. Even though Duan Jishuan knew in his heart that Yuan Deshang might have been instructed by Qiu Xingong to use the martial arts competition as an excuse to harm the soldiers of the Wu Battalion, he still couldn't accuse Yuan Deshang of anything. This was because it would be easy for others to use this against him. Qiu Xingong might also use this as a pretext to make a fuss. When that time came, if everyone in the army was afraid of being punished for accidentally injuring someone during the competition, then there would really be no need for the martial arts competition to continue. What a good, wholeheartedly seeking victory. If I want to fight with General Qiu, will General Qiu be willing? For the remaining 4 matches in the first round, why don't I replace the 4th team of the Wu Battalion and General Qiu replace the 1st team of the Yi Battalion? Let's decide the winner in one match. What do you think, General Qiu? Li Zishuan sneered and looked straight at Qiu Xingong. Without any warning, he issued a challenge to Qiu Xingong. Hard. Li Zishuan's words could only be described with one word, and that was hard. The atmosphere instantly turned solemn. All the surrounding soldiers, no matter if they were from the Yi Battalion or the Wu Battalion, all turned their gazes towards Li Zishuan. The Tang people revered martial arts, and the Tang army was even more so. As soldiers, not only did they revere martial arts, they were even more competitive. Li Zishuan issuing a challenge to Qiu Xingong was like roasting Qiu Xingong on a fire. If Qiu Xingong didn't agree, then he wouldn't have the face to stay in the Black Armored Army anymore. After all, as a high-ranking officer of the Black Armored Army, if he didn't even have the courage to fight, how would he be able to command his subordinates in the future? In the army, strength was everything, and the strong were respected. However, if Qiu Xingong agreed, and if he couldn't win, or if Li Zishuan took the opportunity to injure him, then not only would he lose face, his body would also suffer. No one would have thought that Li Zishuan would issue a challenge to Qiu Xingong for an ordinary soldier. This was clearly offending Qiu Xingong to the point of death. At this point, some of the 2nd Battalion soldiers who were used to hearing bad things about Li Zishuan changed their impression of Li Zishuan. A good general who was respected by his soldiers, other than being strong and able to win battles. More importantly, he loved and protected his soldiers. Li Zishuan's action of challenging the 2nd-in-command of the Black Armored Army to fight for justice for his subordinates. It was hard not to have a good impression of him. Qiu Xingong's face darkened as he stared coldly at Li Zishuan. He didn't think that Li Zishuan would act so unconventionally and challenge him to a duel. If this was outside, he could ignore it. However, this was the army camp, and there were so many soldiers watching. If he rejected Li Zishuan's challenge now, it wouldn't take more than 2 hours for all the soldiers of the Black Armored Army to find out about this and secretly mock him. Then, how would he have the face to stay in the Black Armored Army in the future? The Grand General organized the combat tournament for ordinary soldiers. Even the captains of the various battalions are not allowed to participate. How can this general and adjunctly break the rules? After hesitating for a moment, Qiu Xingong opened his mouth to speak. He didn't agree nor reject the challenge. Instead, he brought out Duan Jishuan and the rules of the tournament to reply to Li Zishuan. It wasn't that he didn't dare to accept the challenge, but that the rules of the tournament didn't allow it. In reality, Qiu Xingong really didn't dare to accept the challenge. No matter how much he looked down on Li Zishuan, there was one thing he had to admit. Li Zixuan's individual martial arts skills were indeed much higher than his. Not to mention his martial arts skills, just based on the fact that Li Zixuan was able to survive a head-on battle with the Grandmaster Wu Jie at the Longmen Pass. There weren't many people in the entire Great Tang who could do that. Naturally, Qiu Xingong couldn't do it. Thus, no matter what, Qiu Xingong wasn't willing to fight with Li Zixuan one-on-one. If he lost, he would be humiliated and injured. If he won, it seemed like he had no chance of winning at all. Hearing Qiu Xingong mention himself, Duan Zixuan's eyes flickered. As the commanding general of the Black Armored Army, even if he stood on Li Zixuan's side, he couldn't completely kill Qiu Xingong. He needed to maintain a balance in the middle. After a moment of silence, Duan Zixuan was about to speak when a mocking voice suddenly sounded from outside the crowd. What do you mean by breaking the rules? Could it be that General Qiu doesn't dare to accept the challenge? Boom! A commotion instantly broke out among the surrounding soldiers. No one expected someone to be so bold as to humiliate Qiu Xingong in public. Everyone craned their necks, wanting to see who was the one who spoke such arrogant words. Chapter 2025. General Qing Chumo pays his respects to General Duan, General Qiu, and Adjunct Li. Qing Chumo cupped his fists and bowed to Duan Zixuan, Qiu Xingong, and Li Zixuan respectively. The Tang army had a strict hierarchy, and the crime of being disrespectful to a general could be serious or not. In order to shut Qiu Xingong's mouth, Qing Chumo could only put on an act and bow to the three generals of the Black Armored Army. Then, he looked at Qiu Xingong and said, "General Qiu, don't be so disrespectful. I didn't mean to be disrespectful to you. I just heard that Adjunct Li didn't know what was good for him and wanted to challenge General Qiu. I thought that since General Qiu's martial arts are unparalleled and your strength is the best in the three armies, you wouldn't be afraid of Adjunct Li. But I didn't expect, it must be because General Qiu doesn't want to bully the weak, so you didn't agree to Adjunct Li's challenge. TSK, General Qiu is really noble and cunning. I mean scheming and calculating. As the saying went, one would only regret not having enough knowledge when it was time to use it. Qing Chumo really wanted to use another method to tactfully humiliate Qiu Xingong, but he was not born to be good at using words, and he didn't have much knowledge in his mind. After saying a few idioms, he was already at a loss for words. But even so, Qiu Xingong was still angered by Qing Chumo's sarcastic and obviously humiliating words. If there wasn't anyone else here, he would have killed Qing Chumo to silence him. The surrounding soldiers all changed their expressions when they heard Qing Chumo's words. Gradually, the way they looked at Qiu Xingong changed. For the past 10 years, Qiu Xingong had been able to maintain a high reputation in the Black Armored Army, not only because of his seniority and outstanding military exploits, but also because of his powerful strength. He was able to subdue all the soldiers in the Black Armored Army. But now, when faced with a challenge from a junior like Li Zixuan, Qiu Xingong had actually cowered and avoided the battle. Qing Chumo's sarcastic words could be said to have completely stripped Qiu Xingong of his bright exterior. This caused the 2nd Battalion soldiers, who usually worshipped Qiu Xingong, to have a change of attitude in an instant. They became disappointed and looked at him with disdain. "Shut up." Feeling the burning gazes of the surrounding people, Qiu Xingong's eyes were about to spit fire. He forcefully resisted the urge to chop Qing Chumo into pieces and forcefully reproached him. "Qing, now it is the competition time for the various battalions. As a member of the team, one of the Wu Battalion, what are you doing here instead of staying in the competition?" This old man was obviously enraged and wanted to use his status to avenge his personal grudge. Qing Chumo rubbed his nose and was about to explain himself when Sun Jiping beat him to it. "General Qiu, Qing Chumo has already gone up for the competition. I heard that the main battalion soldier Lu Ming was severely injured in the competition, so I brought Qing Chumo over to help carry Lu Ming to the military doctor." As a new general who had just joined the Black Armored Army, Sun Jiping didn't have any foundation here, and he had never thought of sucking up to anyone. But now that Li Zixuan had joined the Black Armored Army, he was on Li Zixuan's side. This meant that he was destined to be on the opposite side of Qiu Xingong sooner or later. So at this moment, he wasn't afraid of offending Qiu Xingong and took the initiative to help him out. That's right. We are here to save someone. Cheng Chumo nodded in agreement. Then he quickly walked over to Li Zixuan and asked softly, "Little Xian, where is Lu Ming? Is his injury serious?" Li Zixuan glanced sideways at Cheng Chumo and replied softly, "He has already been carried away by the military doctor. His injury is very serious, but was treated in time, so his life shouldn't be in danger." Phew, that's good. Hearing this, Cheng Chumo heaved a sigh of relief. He was on good terms with Lu Ming and naturally didn't want him to lose his life because of a competition. But after hearing that Lu Ming's injury was very serious, Cheng Chumo was still a little angry. He said softly, "Then what should we do now? We can't just let it go, right? I think that Yuan Desheng must have been ordered by Qiu Xingong. Little Xian, we have to avenge Lu Ming." Hearing this, Li Zixuan rolled his eyes. Of course, he didn't want to just let it go. He also wanted to avenge Lu Ming. But Yuan Desheng insisted that it was a slip of the hand, and Qiu Xingong was like a tortoise in its shell. He didn't accept his challenge at all. He couldn't just roll up his sleeves and beat up Qiu Xingong in front of so many people, right? That wouldn't be in line with the military rules and his principles as a person. He was a civilized person. All right, this matter ends here. The 1st team of the 2nd Battalion and the 4th team of the 5th Battalion will continue the competition. Cheng Chumo was born with a loud voice. Although he tried his best to lower his voice, his words were still heard by Duan Jishuan, who was standing not too far away from Li Zixuan. Hearing that Cheng Chumo wanted to encourage Li Zixuan to continue making a scene, Duan Jishuan had no choice but to stand up and speak sternly to the crowd. In the previous competition, regardless of whether Yuan Desheng did it intentionally or not, this general doesn't want the same thing to happen a second time. The Black Armored Army's martial arts competition was originally organized for the purpose of learning from each other and to increase the motivation of the soldiers during their daily training. It's not for you to use this opportunity to fight valiantly and secretly take revenge. Previously, this general has already said that I hope that you all will stop when the competition starts. If there are any more people who use underhanded means and injure their fellow soldiers in order to obtain victory, then Zhang Kongyan and the rest will serve as a warning to you all. Although from a standpoint, Duan Jishuan was on Li Zixuan's side. However, with the current situation, there was no benefit to being entangled in the matter of Yuan Desheng injuring Lu Ming. Moreover, dragging this matter on wasn't a solution as it would delay the entire martial arts competition. Thus, he could only suppress this matter for now and quickly resume the martial arts competition. Of course, he still had to give out the necessary warnings. Otherwise, the members of the 2nd Battalion would only get worse. Understood. Military orders were like mountains. Since Duan Jishuan had personally spoken, no matter what the crowd thought, no one dared to disobey. They all cupped their fists and accepted the order. As for Qiu Xingong and the few members of the 1st team of the 2nd Battalion beside him, Chapter 2026. Second round, Ma Yong of the 4th Battalion of the 5th Battalion against Su Zhenan of the 1st Battalion of the 2nd Battalion. This is a sparring match. Do not go overboard. Intentionally injuring others will be punished by military law. A quarter of an hour later, the 2nd Battalion's fighting competition resumed. Ma Yong and Zhou Erfu, who had previously sent Lu Ming to the tent for treatment, had also returned at this time. After both teams had decided on their members, the referee, Deng Kong, announced loudly with a serious face. Different from before, Deng Kong emphasized the principle of going overboard this time as a warning to the 2nd Battalion. Fight well. Don't think that you can't win just because your opponent's realm is higher than yours. Realm is not the only factor that determines victory. You guys have trained harder than anyone else, so your physical fitness and strength are your advantages. Perform well and deal with your opponent calmly. Then you will have a chance to win. Before Ma Yong went on stage, Li Zixuan walked to the latter's side and patted his shoulder as he spoke in a low voice. These words were not only for Ma Yong, but also for the other 3 members of the 4th Battalion of the 5th Battalion who had yet to go on stage. This was because their opponents were the elites of the 2nd Battalion. In terms of martial arts realm, the 5th Battalion was generally 1 level lower than the 2nd Battalion. However, in this world, it didn't mean that someone with a higher realm would be able to win against someone with a lower realm. There were many factors that influenced the outcome of a battle. As someone who had been through many battles, Li Zixuan was very clear that the level of a person's realm would only affect the amount of jinqi and the degree of control over one's strength. These weren't insurmountable gaps and could be bridged with other advantages. The 5th Battalion was the first battalion to adopt the new training manual, and the various training contents in the new manual were highly targeted towards the training of the soldier's arm strength, shoulder strength, physical strength, reflexes, and speed. Li Zixuan believed that after these few days of training, Ma Yong and the others would definitely have a certain advantage in these areas. Besides, even if they couldn't win, Li Zixuan didn't want Ma Yong and the others to miss out on this opportunity to challenge someone with a higher realm. To a martial artist, the process of challenging someone with a higher realm was often the most beneficial for him. Li Zixuan wasn't worried about the possibility of getting injured during the fight. He didn't believe that with him supervising at the side, the members of Team 1 of the 2nd Battalion would dare to do anything underhanded. Of course, this didn't mean that Li Zixuan wouldn't allow the members of the 2nd Battalion to injure the members of the 5th Battalion. Under normal circumstances, he could completely accept the injuries caused by the fight. Otherwise, there would be no point in continuing this fighting competition. What he couldn't accept was Yuan Desheng's fighting style of wanting to kill his opponent with every move. Little Xian was right. So what if he had a high cultivation level? Xian's Wei Xian's opponents in these 2 years. If you guys go all out, you will definitely have a chance to win. Chung Chumo chuckled at this time and also chimed in. The corner of Ma Yong's mouth twitched. He had naturally heard of Li Zixuan's battle with Snake King, the annihilation of the 7 cultivators sect, and the battle with the great Grandmaster Wu Jie. It seemed that for Li Zixuan, challenging someone with a higher realm than him had become a common occurrence. But Li Zixuan was after all from a famous sect. How could he compare? Chung Chumo, this idiot, really didn't know what to say. Thank you for joining the army. This subordinate will definitely do his best and not embarrass the 5th Battalion. Chapter 2027. Huff. What kind of monster is this Yuchi boy? In the arena of the Wu Battalion, Xiang Peng wanted to end the battle as soon as possible. He and Yuchi Baolin had already fought dozens of rounds, but there was still no clear winner. The true Qi in his energy center was already showing signs of depletion. But what about Yuchi Baolin? Other than some dust on his body and looking a little disheveled, he didn't seem to have suffered any injuries. His strength was still as great as before, and his reflexes were also as fast as before. After the 2 of them clashed again and knocked each other back, Xiang Peng panted and looked at Yuchi Baolin. He wasn't the only one who found it strange. Team 1 of the Wu Battalion also found it strange. Before the battle, they didn't think that Yuchi Baolin would win. They thought that it would be difficult for Yuchi Baolin to last more than 10 rounds against Xiang Peng. After all, the gap between the 2 of them was obvious. But they didn't expect Yuchi Baolin to last more than 30 rounds against Xiang Peng without showing any signs of defeat. Instead, it was Xiang Peng who was panting. It was obvious that he had overexerted himself. What the hell was going on? Next, it's my turn to attack. Be careful. Yuchi Baolin stood still, took a deep breath, and said to Xiang Peng. Xiang Peng was shocked when he heard that, because when he thought about it carefully in the previous 30 rounds against Yuchi Baolin, he was the one who took the initiative to attack, and Yuchi Baolin was the one who passively defended. At first, he thought that Yuchi Baolin was weak and could only defend passively under his attacks. But now, he realized how laughable his initial thinking was. It wasn't that Yuchi Baolin was weak and couldn't attack, but he was waiting for the right moment, waiting for his true chi to run out before launching a counterattack. After Yuchi Baolin finished speaking, he stomped his right foot on the ground and disappeared from where he stood. Then he charged at Xiang Peng at an extremely fast speed. Actually, speed wasn't Yuchi Baolin's strong suit. His current speed wasn't slow, but it definitely wasn't fast either. If Xiang Peng was at his peak, he wouldn't even care about Yuchi Baolin's speed. But the current Xiang Peng, huff. Just what kind of monster is this Yuchi family's brat? In the arena of the Wu Battalion, Xiang Peng was determined to end the battle as soon as possible. He and Yuchi Baolin had already fought for dozens of rounds, but there was still no clear winner. The genuine chi in his dantian was even showing signs of running out. But what about Yuchi Baolin? Other than a little dust on his body and a somewhat wretched appearance, he didn't seem to be injured. His strength was just as great as before, and his reactions were just as fast as before. After the two of them clashed again and knocked each other back, Xiang Peng panted twice. He looked at Yuchi Baolin and couldn't help but wonder in his heart. He wasn't the only one who found it strange. The other members of the 1st Unit of the 5th Battalion also found it strange. Before the battle, they didn't think much of Yuchi Baolin. They thought that it would be difficult for Yuchi Baolin to last more than 10 rounds against Xiang Peng. After all, there was a huge gap between the two of them. However, they never expected that Yuchi Baolin would be able to last more than 30 rounds against Xiang Peng without showing any signs of defeat. Instead, it was Xiang Peng who was panting. It was obvious that he had exhausted himself. Chapter 2028. Victory. Baolin actually won. Huh. 2 consecutive victories. Our team, one of the Wu Battalion, will definitely enter the knockout round this time. After the referee announced that Yuchi Baolin had obtained the victory of the 2nd round, the soldiers of the Wu Battalion immediately let out a burst of wild cheers. Shen Mu, Wang Rong, and Xiao Ming, the 3 members of the Wu Battalion, quickly came to Yuchi Baolin's side. They patted on Yuchi Baolin's shoulder and laughed loudly. "Ha! Baolin, good job. I couldn't tell that you were hiding your skills. Not bad, not bad. Baolin, your skills are not bad. Now that our team has won 2 consecutive rounds, it is almost certain that we will enter the next round of the knockout round." Yuchi Baolin was flattered by the crowd's attention. He scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "I'm just lucky, haha." The few of them laughed and joked for a while. Then Shen Mu began to plan the candidates for the 3rd round. He said, after Xiang Peng was defeated, the remaining 3 members of Team 4 of the Wu Battalion are not very strong. Logically speaking, no matter who goes up, they will be able to win smoothly. However, if we want to win the next round with the least exhaustion, I feel that you, Xiao Ming, are the most suitable. Your attacking style is the sharpest among us. If you go up and end the battle quickly, we will have more energy to face stronger opponents in the following knockout rounds. What do you think? After saying that, Shen Mu looked at the most burly soldier among the 4 of them. The reason why he sent Xiao Ming, other than the latter's attacking style, was that Xiao Ming was the youngest among the 3 of them and had the most stamina. Although Wang Rong was strong, he was after all over 30 years old. In terms of stamina and explosive power, he was naturally not as good as Xiao Ming. Therefore, unless it was the most crucial moment, Shen Mu would not send Wang Rong, this trump card, to fight. The soldier nodded and said with a confident look, "No problem. Brother Baolin can defeat Xiang Peng. There is no reason for me to lose to the other 3 in the next round. Old Shun, don't worry, I will definitely win within 10 moves." Hearing that, Shen Mu patted Xiao Ming's shoulder and said, "Good. If we win the preliminary round with the least consumption, our chances of winning the knockout round will be even greater. In this fighting competition, our team's goal is to enter the finals. Otherwise, we'll disappoint Kanjun Li and Field Officer Sun. That's right. We must enter the finals of this fighting competition." Xiao Ming, Wang Rong, and Yuchi Baolin nodded in agreement. At this moment, the referee walked over, looked at Shen Mu, and asked, "Shen Mu, "Who's on your team for this round?" Shenmu naturally pushed Xiaoming out and said, "Xiaoming." The referee nodded and turned towards the direction of the 3rd Battalion. "Xiang Peng, who's going to fight in the next round?" Not long after, the same question was asked to Xiang Peng. Xiang Peng turned his head and exchanged glances with the other team members. Everyone nodded towards him. Then, Xiang Peng took a deep breath, looked towards the referee, and replied in a deep voice, "3rd Battalion, 4th Battalion voluntarily admits defeat. There is no need to fight the 3rd round." Once these words came out, the referee's face instantly revealed a trace of astonishment. However, the few members of the 3rd Battalion, 4th Battalion didn't have any expression of surprise on their faces. Evidently, before the referee arrived, they had already discussed and reached a consensus on this matter. The 3rd Battalion, 4th Battalion, and the 5th Battalion, 1st Battalion, 4th Battalion weren't far apart. Xiang Peng's words naturally fell into the ears of Shen Mu, Wang Rong, and the rest. The 4 of them instantly cast their gazes towards Xiang Peng. At this moment, the referee finally recovered from his shock. He looked at Xiang Peng with a solemn face and said, "Are you sure?" Chapter 2029. 2nd Battalion of the Black Armored Army. Ma Yong of the 4th Battalion of the 5th Battalion and Su Jinan of the 1st Battalion of the 2nd Battalion were engaged in a battle that didn't seem that intense. The reason why it wasn't that intense was because one of them was attacking with all his might, while the other was defending with ease. It wasn't like the previous battle between Lu Ming and Yuan Desheng, where every punch hit the flesh and was extraordinarily intense. Su Jinan's level of martial arts was much higher than Ma Yong's. Hence, with the advantage of the qi in his body, he was able to easily deal with Ma Yong's attacks. The two of them had exchanged more than 10 blows, but there wasn't any sign of a victor being decided. Actually, with Su Jinan's strength, if he were to focus all his attacks on Ma Yong, it would be very difficult for Ma Yong to defend himself. However, he didn't do so. Instead, he was casually dealing with Ma Yong's attacks while secretly observing the situation outside the arena from the corner of his eye. More accurately, he was observing Li Zixuan and Qiu Xingong, who were standing by the side of the arena. As Qiu Xingong's old subordinate, Su Jinan subconsciously obeyed Qiu Xingong's orders. However, the current situation didn't allow him to follow Qiu Xingong's orders. This was because Li Zixuan had been staring at him and Ma Yong from the side. How would he have the guts to attack Ma Yong? It was true that Qiu Xingong was his old superior, but he didn't dare to attack Ma Yong directly under Li Zixuan's nose. In that case, what awaited him would be severe military law, and it was even very likely that he would be executed directly. His loyalty to Qiu Xingong wasn't to the extent that he would die for him. Hence, Su Jinan had been waiting for an opportunity. He was waiting for Li Zixuan to shift his gaze elsewhere. When the time came, he would take the opportunity to deal a fatal blow to Ma Yong. This way, he would be able to complete Qiu Xingong's mission and not be discovered by Li Zixuan. As long as Li Zixuan didn't see him attacking Ma Yong, he wasn't worried that he would be punished. This was because the surrounding people were all from the 2nd Battalion. Even if the members of the 4th Battalion of the 5th Battalion saw him attacking Ma Yong, they wouldn't be able to do anything. However, after waiting for a long time, Su Jinan didn't wait for the opportunity that he had imagined. Li Zixuan's eyes didn't shift his gaze away from him. This made Su Zixuan's life was very difficult. Just like that, Su Jinan dealt with Ma Yong's dozens of attacks by multitasking. Su Jinan knew that things weren't going well, because he didn't have much true qi left in his body. On the other hand, Ma Yong lived up to his name. After attacking for dozens of times, not only did he not show any signs of exhaustion, he became more and more courageous. Of course, this was also due to the recent days of hard training and the increase in his physical strength. As he attacked for dozens of times, his blood was boiling, and he felt that every part of his body was much more flexible than usual. At this moment, Ma Yong saw Su Jinan looking out of the corner of his eye. He took a deep breath, then concentrated his qi in his dantian. With a loud roar, he waved his fist and smashed it towards Su Jinnan's face. Hearing Ma Yong's loud roar, Su Jinnan was shocked. He quickly gathered his true chi and subconsciously dodged to the right, trying to dodge Ma Yong's heavy blow. But who knew that Ma Yong was more cautious this time? Although his roar was loud, it was just a bluff. The punch just now was just a feint. When he saw Su Jinnan dodging to the right, he retracted his right fist and jumped up to do a roundhouse kick, which swept towards Su Jinnan's lower body. Bam! Su Jinnan had just stood up and had no time to change his direction. He was immediately tripped by Ma Yong's sweep. Due to the strong inertia, he fell to the ground in front of him in a dog-eating-shit posture, splashing smoke and dust on the ground. Ma Yong didn't expect his attack to work, but at this moment, he didn't have time to think about it. He quickly followed up with another attack. In a flash, he came in front of Su Jinnan. Then he waved his right fist and smashed it towards Su Jinnan's head. Of course, his fist stopped about 5 inches away from Su Jinnan's head. Su Jinnan felt a cold wind blowing towards the back of his head. He raised his head and saw Ma Yong's huge fist. Ma Yong said in a muffled voice, "You lost." Indeed, if this was a battlefield, Ma Yong's last punch would have been smashed. At that time, even if Su Jinnan didn't die, he would be seriously injured. I lost. Hearing this, Su Jinnan's eyes flashed with disbelief. Then, as if he suddenly thought of something terrible, his expression changed. He quickly turned his head to look at Qiu Xingong, who was outside the arena. Qiu Xinggong's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. When he saw Su Jinnan looking at him, Qiu Xinggong glared at him fiercely. Su Jinnan's heart skipped a beat. He thought to himself that he was completely finished this time. Not only did he fail to complete the mission that Qiu Xinggong secretly gave him, but he also lost a round of the competition and let the 4th team of the Wu Battalion get a small point. When the fighting competition ended, wouldn't Qiu Xinggong eat him alive? The second round of the preliminary round, Ma Yong of the 4th team of the Wu Battalion wins. Seeing that Su Jinnan had lost, the referee Deng Kong was stunned for a while before he came back to his senses and announced, "Ha! Ma Yong, good job." Chapter 2030. Pooh! How could Su Jinnan, who had already suffered some minor injuries from the battle, withstand the furious kick of Qiu Xinggong, who was at the Grandmaster realm? After landing on the ground, Su Jinnan instantly felt the blood in his body churning. He tasted something sweet in his throat and couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Just one kick, and Su Jinnan was severely injured. It could be seen how furious Qiu Xinggong was at this moment. The surrounding second camp soldiers instantly fell silent. As for the other 3 second camp soldiers who had yet to enter the arena, after seeing Qiu Xinggong kick Su Jinnan, all of them couldn't help but turn pale. Fear flashed across their eyes, because when they entered the arena later, if they couldn't complete the mission given by Qiu Xinggong, then they would have the same ending as Su Jinnan. Thinking back to Li Zixuan's extremely protective behavior when he challenged Qiu Xinggong to a one-on-one battle due to his soldiers being injured, and then looking at Qiu Xinggong's kick because Su Jinnan didn't complete the mission he secretly gave to him, those second camp soldiers who had yet to enter the arena felt a chill in their hearts at the same time. Was it because they didn't want to complete the mission given by Qiu Xinggong? They wanted to, but the conditions didn't allow it. They had all seen Su Jinnan's previous performance on the field, and they could roughly guess Su Jinnan's intentions. He wanted to wait for Li Zixuan's attention to shift away from the field before taking the opportunity to make a move. Unfortunately, Li Zixuan had been staring at the field the whole time, let alone Su Jinnan. If it were anyone else in their team, they wouldn't dare to make a move under such circumstances. Although most soldiers weren't afraid of death, but that was on the battlefield. Now, they were only on the training grounds, and no one wanted to be executed for breaking military rules. Su Jinnan was careless. "Please calm down." Second Camp Lieutenant Sun Tao, who was standing beside Qiu Xinggong, couldn't help but change his expression when he saw the situation. After that, he hurriedly cupped his fists and bowed towards Qiu Xinggong. Qiu Xingong's face was stern as he said angrily, "Humph. Careless? He couldn't even defeat someone weaker than him. If this was on the battlefield, wouldn't anyone be able to hack him to death? How can I have such a useless soldier under my command?" After saying that, Qiu Xingong was still angry. He looked at Su Jinan, who was kneeling on one knee and spitting out blood, and said coldly, "Humph. Go and receive 30 strokes of the rod. 30 strokes of the cane." If it was any other time, Su Jinan would not care about a mere 30 strokes. However, he had been severely injured by Qiu Xingong's kick. If he were to receive another 30 strokes, he would not be able to get out of bed for a few days. But in the face of Qiu Xingong, who was in a state of rage, how could Su Jinan dare to say no? Enduring the pain, he gritted his teeth and stood up. He cupped his fist towards Qiu Xingong and said, "This subordinate obeys." After he finished speaking, he bent his waist and staggered out of the drill grounds. Throughout the entire process, no one dared to step forward to support him. This was the power and prestige of Qiu Xingong in the 2nd Battalion. General Qiu is really angry. It's just that in this martial arts competition, victory and defeat are inevitable. Why must you be so harsh on your subordinates? At this moment, Li Zixuan walked to the front of Qiu Xingong and could not help but frown. The reason why he stood out now was not to pretend to be noble to win people's hearts. It was because he could not stand the actions of this old fellow Qiu Xingong. Although reasoning with this group of rough men in the barracks was not as effective as punching and kicking, even when Li Zixuan was in the 5th and 3rd Battalions, he had also kicked some soldiers who had made mistakes. However, his kicks were more of a formality, and he did not use much strength. His purpose was only to make the other party realize their mistakes. However, Qiu Xingong's kick was filled with anger and was completely aimed at killing or crippling the other party. His attitude was so arrogant and his actions were so vile that people could not stand it anymore. Others might be afraid of Qiu Xingong's power and dare not speak out. However, Li Zixuan was not afraid. After all, the two of them had already fallen out with each other. Li Zixuan did not mind that the relationship between the two of them would worsen. Isn't Li Zixuan's meddling too much? I remember that the 2nd Battalion is not under Li Zixuan's jurisdiction yet. Li Zixuan should worry more about whether the 5th Battalion can make it to the end of this year's martial arts competition. Young people just like to rush for quick success and quick benefits. They come up with new exercises and don't know that things like strength rely on the accumulation of years and years. Want to achieve it quickly? Impossible. Hearing this, Qiu Xingong's old face darkened. He then mercilessly mocked Li Zixuan. After saying this, he turned his head and said to the referee Deng Kong, who was not far away, "Deng Kong, the next round of the competition is about to begin." Deng Kong quickly nodded and said, "General Qiu is right. The 3rd round of the competition is about to begin. The 2nd Battalion will first choose their members." Not long after, the members of both sides were decided. The 2nd Battalion would send out a person called Zhao Xuqing, an expert who had just reached the middle stage of the Qi transformation stage. The 5th Battalion would send out Zhou Erfu, who was only half a step into the Qi transformation stage. The gap between the two could not be said to be small. Before entering the arena, Qiu Xingong's cold gaze swept across Zhao Xuqing. He only heard a soft humph and said, "If you lose this round again, then you..." Chapter 2031. Under the watchful eyes of the 2nd Battalion and the 5th Battalion, the 3rd round of the competition soon began. In the 2nd round, Ma Yong unexpectedly defeated the powerful Su Jinan. This gave Zhou Erfu a lot of confidence because Ma Yong's strength was similar to his. He believed that as long as he reacted calmly and performed well like Li Zixuan said, he would have a chance to win. Zhou Erfu's eyes were fixed on Zhao Xuqing as soon as he entered the arena. He didn't attack rashly because the enemy was stronger than him. He had never fought with Zhao Xuqing before and didn't know where Zhao Xuqing's weakness was. If he attacked rashly in this situation, not only would he have no chance of winning, he would also expose his weakness to the opponent. Therefore, Zhou Erfu decided to plan carefully before acting, adopting the strategy of gaining the upper hand after striking. On the other hand, Zhao Xuqing had already made up his mind in such a short time. He would win this round, but he wouldn't follow Qiu Xingong's order to severely injure Zhou Erfu. After the two people in the arena clasped their fists and greeted each other, Zhao Xuqing channeled qi into his toes and instantly disappeared from the spot. The next moment, he appeared in front of Zhou Erfu. He assumed the posture of a hungry wolf and fiercely punched Zhou Erfu's chest. Without probing or any fancy moves, Zhao Xuqing used all his strength right from the beginning, wanting to defeat Zhou Erfu with one move. Bam! Zhou Erfu's eyes were fixed on Zhao Xuqing from the moment he entered the arena. Therefore, facing Zhao Xuqing's all-out attack, Zhou Erfu was not unprepared. When Zhao Xuqing's fist was about 5 inches away from his body, he had already reacted. He quickly stepped back while clenching his fists and crossing them in front of his chest. Then, the audience heard a bang, and Zhou Erfu was directly sent flying. It couldn't be helped. The difference in strength between the two was too big. Plus, Zhao Xuqing used all his strength right from the beginning. It was very difficult for Zhou Erfu to set up a defensive formation in such a short time. Zhao Xuqing didn't stop. He flashed in the direction where Zhou Erfu was sent flying and quickly caught up with Zhou Erfu. He reached out his right hand like lightning and grabbed Zhou Erfu's ankle. Then, he lifted Zhou Erfu's right leg and swung him up in the air and began to spin rapidly on the spot. Seeing this, Cheng Chumo and the other 3 members of the 5th Battalion's 4th team couldn't help but change their expressions. Because they seemed to be able to foresee Zhou Erfu's ending, he would probably be severely injured like Lu Ming, right? Li Zixuan, on the other hand, didn't change his expression. He was still watching the situation in the field without blinking. But if one were to observe carefully, one could see that his legs were tensed up. Presumably, as long as Zhao Xuqing on the field made any more outrageous moves, he would be the first to rush onto the field to save Zhou Erfu. On the other hand, Qiu Xingong at the side narrowed his eyes. From the slight curve of his mouth, he must be very satisfied with Zhao Xuqing's performance on the field. From his point of view, Zhao Xuqing was chasing Zhou Erfu so relentlessly. He must have taken the task given to him seriously. Then, Zhao Xuqing should be taking advantage of the situation to throw Zhou Erfu out of the field and take the opportunity to severely injure him, right? Everything was developing in the direction that he wanted. But soon, Qiu Xingong couldn't laugh anymore. Zhou Erfu, if I let go of my hands now, you will definitely fly out of the field and be injured. Do you admit defeat? Although both of Zhao Xuqing's hands were busy spinning, Zhou Erfu's leg, his mouth, was still idle. At this moment, he suddenly opened his mouth and asked loudly, "Hey, this Zhao Xuqing is quite a virtuous person." Zhao Xuqing's voice wasn't very loud, but it definitely wasn't soft either. Almost all of the sergeants near the field could hear him. After Cheng Chumo heard it, he couldn't help but relax and grinned. After all, just a moment ago, he was worried that Zhao Xuqing would throw Zhou Erfu out of the field directly. Li Zixuan smiled, but didn't say anything. Then, he turned his head and glanced at Qiu Xingong inadvertently. He saw that the smile on Qiu Xingong's face had completely frozen. The old man frowned and stared at Zhao Xuqing on the field. He couldn't wait to swallow Zhao Xuqing alive. Obviously, anyone could see that Qiu Xingong was very unhappy now. He was even suppressing the anger in his heart. "I admit defeat." Chapter 2032. Join the army. I've brought shame to our Wu battalion. Please punish me for my crimes. Black Armor Army Drill Ground, 2nd Battalion's field. Zhou Erfu, who had just lost, walked down from the field and came to Li Zixuan's side. He bowed and said with a face full of shame, "Speaking of Lu Ming and Ma Yong who went up before him, they both fought till the end. He was the first one to admit defeat. This made Zhou Erfu feel so ashamed that he couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. "Get up quickly." Li Zishuan stretched out his hand to help Zhou Erfu up and comforted him. It's normal to win or lose in a martial arts competition. Moreover, that Zhao Xuqing's strength is already stronger than yours. He attacked with all his strength right from the start. There was no way you could have withstood it. In that kind of situation, other than admitting defeat, you had no other choice. Everyone can understand. Speaking up to here, Li Zishuan looked at the other two soldiers of 2nd Battalion's 4th Battalion who hadn't gone up yet and said in a deep voice, "You guys don't have to feel pressure for the next 2 matches. The 5 of you in 2nd Battalion's 1st Battalion are all the top experts in 2nd Battalion. You guys just have to do your best and perform well. The result of a match is actually not important. What I hope to see is that you guys can recognize the difference between your own strength and the other expert from these matches. From there, you will be motivated to train harder in the future. Ever since our battalion changed to using the new drill, I believe that you guys can feel your strength improving day by day. Zhou Erfu, although you lost today, but as long as you continue to train according to the new drill, I believe that one day you will definitely be able to defeat Zhao Xuqing or even an opponent stronger than him." Zhou Erfu and the others had seen how Qiu Xingong treated the defeated Su Jinan. At this time, not only did Li Zishuan not reprimand Zhou Erfu who admitted defeat, but he even comforted and encouraged him. As the saying goes, if there's no comparison, there's no harm. Under the comparison, everyone couldn't help but feel touched and respected Li Zishuan even more. "Rest assured, join the army. I will definitely do my best in the following training." Zhou Erfu cupped his fists and said solemnly. At this moment, although Zhao Xuqing had just won the match, there wasn't a trace of complacency on his face. After he got off the stage, he naturally had to report to Qiu Xingong. He cupped his fists and bowed. "General, yes." Although he was unhappy in his heart, Qiu Xingong couldn't say anything in front of everyone. After all, Zhao Xuqing had won the competition. He could only nod his head expressionlessly as a form of greeting. However, his face was as calm as water, and his gaze was as cold as ice, causing the people standing beside him to shiver uncontrollably. When Zhao Xuqing saw that Qiu Xingong did not reprimand him, he could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to walk further away, he suddenly heard Qiu Xingong speak again. "What did I tell you before the competition? I want you to suppress your cultivation level and fight with the brothers of the Wu Battalion." "Zhao Xuqing, what's wrong with you? Why do you have to rely on your profound inner strength to bully others? You are destroying the relationship between the Wu Battalion and the 2nd Battalion, affecting the unity of the soldiers. Although you won the competition, I still have to punish you. In a while, you will receive 30 strokes of the military rod." Zhao Xuqing, who had just heaved a sigh of relief, and the other 2 soldiers of the 2nd Battalion who had yet to enter the stage, upon hearing Qiu Xingong's words, their faces instantly changed and their hearts tightened. Everyone knew in their hearts that Qiu Xingong was abusing his position for personal revenge. He purposely found an excuse to punish Zhao Xuqing and used this as a warning to the people who were about to enter the stage. Chapter 2033. Today, in the first match of the 2nd Battalion, Yuan Deshang had heavily injured Lu Ming. At that time, Li Zishuan had already felt that something was amiss. From his point of view, Yuan Deshang himself shouldn't have the guts to publicly injure someone during the martial arts competition. Initially, Li Zishuan had guessed that Yuan Deshang had been instructed by someone else. However, from Qiu Xingong's words and actions, although he didn't directly admit it, anyone with a brain could see that the reason why Yuan Deshang was willing to take the risk of being punished by military law to injure Lu Ming was most likely because he had been coerced by Qiu Xingong. Qiu Xingong was using his own power to get rid of his dissidents. Therefore, after knowing Qiu Xingong's scheme, Li Zishuan decisively let the 2 remaining members of the 5th Battalion admit defeat. The reason why he had proposed a martial arts competition was to stimulate the competitive spirit of the soldiers, allowing them to learn from each other and increase their own strength. If it was just facing a strong opponent, Li Zishuan wouldn't have let the soldiers of the 5th Battalion admit defeat. Because as someone who had been through this before, he knew that crossing levels to challenge an opponent was the best way to hone one's own strength and increase one's own strength faster. However, the current situation was no longer a simple matter of crossing levels to challenge an opponent. The overall strength of the members of the 1st Battalion of the 2nd Battalion was not only higher than that of the 5th Battalion, but the other party had also received Qiu Xingong's orders to kill the soldiers of the 5th Battalion. Therefore, Li Zishuan felt that there was no need to continue with the remaining 2 matches. Although increasing one's strength was important, it wasn't as important as one's life. Withdrawing from the competition and admitting defeat was not only to protect the participating soldiers of the 5th Battalion, it was also a form of mercy to the participating soldiers of the 2nd Battalion. Although Qiu Xingong had led the 2nd Battalion astray, Li Zishuan didn't think that everyone in the 2nd Battalion was as selfish and evil as Qiu Xingong. Most of them still harbored the dream of killing the enemy to serve the country and building their career. Today, in the first match of 2nd Battalion, Yuan Deshang had heavily injured Lu Ming. At that time, Li Zishuan had already felt that something was amiss, because from his point of view, Yuan Deshang himself should not have had the guts to publicly injure someone during the combat tournament. At first, Li Zishuan had guessed that Yuan Deshang had been instructed by someone else, and from Qiu Xingong's words and actions just now, although he did not directly admit it, anyone with a bit of intelligence could see that the reason Yuan Deshang was willing to take the risk of being punished by military law to heavily injure Lu Ming was very likely because he had been coerced by Qiu Xingong. Qiu Xingong was using his power to get rid of his opponents. Therefore, after knowing Qiu Xingong's plan, Li Zishuan decisively made the remaining 2 members of the E Battalion admit defeat. The reason why he had proposed the combat tournament was to arouse the competitive spirit of the soldiers, so that they could learn from each other and increase their own strength. If it was just a simple encounter with a strong opponent, Li Zishuan wouldn't have let the soldiers of the E Battalion admit defeat. Because as someone who had experienced it before, he knew that the best way to train one's strength was to fight against an enemy who was of a higher level and to increase one's own strength faster. But in this situation, it was no longer a simple matter of fighting against an enemy who was of a higher level. The overall strength of the members of the 1st Battalion of the 2nd Battalion was not only higher than the members of the E Battalion, but also Chapter 2034. Li Zishuan led the 4 members of the 4th team of the 5th Battalion away. One of them had to be carried away for treatment. The first round of the preliminary round of the Black Armored Army had basically ended. The 5th Battalion had 1 win and 1 loss. Team 1 of the 5th Battalion had defeated Team 4 of the 3rd Battalion, while Team 4 of the 5th Battalion had lost to Team 1 of the 2nd Battalion. Team 2 of the 2nd Battalion also had 1 win and 1 loss. They won against Team 4 of the 5th Battalion, while Team 3 of the 2nd Battalion had lost to Team 1 of the 1st Battalion without any suspense. The current situation was extremely disadvantageous for the 2nd Battalion. In the second round of the preliminary round, Team 2 of the 2nd Battalion had to face Team 3 of the 1st Battalion, while Team 4 of the 2nd Battalion had to face Team 2 of the 4th Battalion. In terms of overall strength, Team 3 of the 1st Battalion was obviously stronger than Team 2 of the 2nd Battalion, while Team 2 of the 4th Battalion was slightly stronger than Team 2 of the 2nd Battalion. Hence, the 2nd Battalion didn't have a 100% chance of winning the second round of the preliminary round. The best outcome was to win 1 round. Of course, the worst outcome was that they wouldn't win a single round, and the probability of that happening was very high. If that was the case, then only 1 team from the 2nd Battalion would be able to enter the knockout round. To the 2nd Battalion, it would really be a bloodbath at the start of the second round. After the 5th Battalion had left, the match between Team 2 of the 2nd Battalion and Team 3 of the 1st Battalion began very quickly. It was worth mentioning that when Team 1 of the 2nd Battalion and Team 4 of the 5th Battalion were competing, the 5 members of Team 3 of the 1st Battalion had already been watching from the side. The actions of Qiu Xingong, Yuan Deshang, and the others had all been witnessed by the members of the 1st Battalion. Furthermore, the 1st Battalion was currently using Li Zishuan's new drill code. Hence, if the Black Armored Army were to be divided into factions, the 1st Battalion would be considered as Li Zishuan's faction, while the 2nd Battalion would be considered as Qiu Xingong's faction. Hence, the moment both sides entered the arena, they immediately got into a fight. The members of Team 3 of the 1st Battalion couldn't stand the despicable actions of Qiu Xingong, Yuan Deshang, and the others. Hence, they immediately started beating up the members of Team 2 of the 2nd Battalion. "How dare you?" Li Zishuan left with 4 members of the 4th team of the Wu Battalion. One of them had to be carried away for treatment. The first round of the Black Armored Army's preliminary round had basically ended. On the Wu Battalion side, there was 1 win and 1 loss. The 1st team of the Wu Battalion defeated the 4th team of the 3rd Battalion, while the 4th team of the Wu Battalion lost to the 1st team of the 2nd Battalion. The 2nd team of the 2nd Battalion also had 1 win and 1 loss. They won against the 4th team of the 5th Battalion, while the 3rd team of the 2nd Battalion lost to the 1st Battalion of the 1st Battalion without any suspense. The current situation was actually extremely disadvantageous for the 2nd Battalion, because in the second round of the preliminary round, the 2nd Battalion's, 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 2nd Battalion. In terms of overall strength, Team 3 of the A camp was obviously stronger than Team 2 of the B camp, whereas Team 2 of the D camp was slightly stronger than Team 2 of the B camp. Therefore, the 2nd Battalion did not have 100% confidence in winning the second round of the competition. The best result would be to win 1 round. Of course, the worst result would be to not win a single round. Furthermore, the possibility of the worst result happening was very high. If that was the case, then there would only be 1 team from the 2nd Battalion entering the elimination round. To the 2nd Battalion, it would be a bloodbath at the start of the competition. After the members of the 5th Battalion left, the 2nd team of the 2nd Battalion and the 3rd team of the A camp began very quickly. It was worth mentioning that when the 1st team of the 2nd Battalion and the 4th team of the E Battalion were competing, the 5 members of the 3rd team of the A camp were already watching from the side. Chapter 2035. Team A has won 3 matches in a row and has advanced to the knockout round. Team B has been eliminated, as Min Jian of 2nd Battalion had no choice but to admit defeat. 2nd Battalion lost completely and was directly eliminated, bidding farewell to the fighting competition. Qiu Xingong clenched his fists tightly and stared at Deng Kong, who was loudly announcing the results at the side of the arena. His gaze was cold, and his face was ashen. Actually, Qiu Xingong had already expected that 2nd Battalion's second team would lose this round. However, he didn't expect 2nd Battalion's second team to be defeated so thoroughly. Being defeated by a battalion's third team with a score of 3-0, where would he put his face? Secondly, not only did Team 2 of the 2nd Battalion lose the competition, there were also 3 members who were beaten black and blue by Team 3 of the 1st Battalion. They would need at least 3 to 5 days to recover from their injuries. This would directly affect the battle between the 2nd Battalion and the 5th Battalion in 2 days. Therefore, Qiu Xingong felt like he had gone for wool and come home shorn. "How's Team 4? Forcefully suppressing the anger in his heart, Qiu Xingong asked in a deep voice. Naturally, he was asking Sun Tao, who was standing beside him. Hearing this, Sun Tao's expression changed. After hesitating for a moment, he still cupped his fists and replied, "Reporting to General, Team 4 has won 2 matches, and Team 2 of Ding Battalion has also won 2 matches. They should be fighting the last match now, and the results will be out soon. What? They're actually fighting in such a stalemate. Qiu Xingong's hair stood up in anger. He said with a displeased expression, "According to what you said, we might still lose the match against Team D of... What trash? Look at the soldiers you trained. What did you tell me before the match? Weren't you very confident? Where did your confidence go?" Qiu Xingong's current mentality had undergone a subtle change. Before today, the old man's greatest hope for today's combat tournament was to let the B Battalion take advantage of the tournament to injure as many experts as possible. However, things didn't go as he wished. They only drew 1 team from the E Battalion, and that was the E Battalion 4th team. Furthermore, during the battle with the E Battalion 4th team, the B Battalion only managed to injure 1 member of the E Battalion 4th team, Lu Ming. The rest of the members of the E Battalion almost all escaped unscathed. Now that the preliminary round was nearing its end, Qiu Xingong knew that his initial wish could no longer be realized. Therefore, he could only settle for the next best thing, which was to hope that as many teams as possible from the B Battalion could advance into the knockout round. On one hand, it would boost the morale of the B Battalion, and on the other hand, the more teams from the B Battalion could advance into the knockout round, the higher the possibility of encountering the E Battalion in the later rounds. At that time, he would have the opportunity to settle all his grudges at once. However, it seemed that everything was predestined. The heavens had played a huge joke on him. Not only did his first wish not come true, even his second wish was about to be ruined. The B Battalion 4th team actually fought the D Battalion 2nd team with a score of 2-2. If the B Battalion 4th team lost in the last round, then they would be directly disqualified, and there would only be 1 team from the B Battalion advancing into the knockout round. Actually, such a result might seem inconceivable, but there was a certain degree of inevitability. Although in terms of overall strength, the B Battalion was obviously stronger than the D Battalion due to having more veterans, but the recruits of the D Battalion were all elites from the various battalions in the capital. Perhaps they might be lacking in the ability to coordinate in battle formations, but in terms of individual combat ability, they were not much weaker than those veterans in the B Battalion. On top of that, the 2nd team of the D Battalion was the 2nd strongest team of the 4 teams of the D Battalion, while the 4th team of the B Battalion was only the 4th strongest team of the B Battalion. Thus, if the 2 teams were to fight, the chances of victory and defeat would be about 50%. In fact, the 2nd team of the D Battalion was slightly stronger than the 4th team of the B Battalion. If the B Battalion 4th team lost to the D Battalion 2nd team in the end, it would not be an injustice at all. Chapter 2036. How could there be such a coincidence? Is it a coincidence, or was it done on purpose? After seeing the results of the draw, Li Zixuan couldn't help but mutter to himself in his heart. From the preliminary round to the knockout round, the B Battalion had always drawn the E Battalion. From the perspective of probability, the probability of this happening was extremely low, but it still happened. In addition to that, Yuan Deshang from the B Battalion had accidentally injured Lu Ming during the competition. This made Li Zixuan suspect that Qiu Xingong was secretly plotting against the E Battalion. It wasn't that he was measuring the stature of a gentleman with his own yardstick, but the fact that Lu Ming was accidentally injured by Yuan Deshang today was a little out of the ordinary. Logically speaking, in a normal competition in the military, no one would use every move to kill their opponent. Even if there was a deep grudge between them, they wouldn't use the competition to get rid of their opponents, because that would be too obvious. After the event, not only would they be severely punished if they were executed or expelled from the military camp, it would also bring shame to their ancestors, and they wouldn't be able to raise their heads for the rest of their lives. Yuan Deshang and Lu Ming didn't have any grudges, but he used the competition as an opportunity to secretly kill Lu Ming. In addition to Qiu Xingong's abnormal behavior earlier, Li Zixuan was almost certain that Yuan Deshang must have been instructed by Qiu Xingong to kill Lu Ming. It was also fortunate that he had arrived at the B Battalion's competition grounds in time, or else the other members of the E Battalion after Lu Ming would have been seriously injured by the B Battalion. Of course, these were all conjectures that Li Zishuan made based on the actual situation. He didn't have any concrete evidence, or else he would have directly reported Qiu Xingong. Other than that, the most crucial point, and the one that Li Zishuan couldn't understand the most, was that if Qiu Xingong really intended to use the combat competition to make things difficult for the E Battalion, then why was he so sure that the B Battalion would definitely be able to draw the E Battalion as their opponent during the drawing of lots? One had to know that drawing lots was a completely uncontrollable and random event. Could it be that Qiu Xingong was able to control the results of the drawing of lots? Thinking up to this point, Li Zishuan looked suspiciously at Qiu Xingong, who was standing at the side. The latter's gloomy face didn't reveal anything, but Li Zishuan clearly caught a flash of pride in the corner of Qiu Xingong's eyes when he heard that Team 1 of the 2nd Battalion would be going up against Team 1 of the 5th Battalion in the elimination round. His heart skipped a beat, and he secretly wondered if Qiu Xingong had really tampered with the drawing of lots. But how was that possible? The entire lot drawing process had been carried out under his and Duan Jishuan's eyes. How could any of the 2nd Battalion's little tricks escape his and Qiu Xingong's eyes? Could it be that there was a problem with the name tag? Thinking up to this point, Li Zishuan's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He subconsciously turned his gaze towards the pot that contained the bamboo lots. He secretly thought that if Qiu Xingong had tampered with the E Battalion's bamboo lots beforehand, then it wouldn't be strange for the B Battalion to be able to draw the E Battalion as their opponent every time. Just as Li Zishuan was about to step forward to check the bamboo lots, he heard Duan Jishuan beside him say, "Adjunctly, since the elimination round has already been decided, then let's start as soon as possible. Let's try to finish the combat competition before noon, so that it doesn't affect the soldiers' afternoon training." Yes. Li Zishuan came back to his senses and replied subconsciously. He knew that now wasn't the time to investigate if Qiu Xingong had tampered with the bamboo lots. The most important thing now was to hurry up and start the elimination round. Chapter 2037. Revenge is one thing, but we must first ensure that we can win the competition. Li Zishuan looked towards Cheng Chimo, Wang Rong, and the rest, and said in a low voice, "It was the 2nd Battalion's team, one who intentionally injured Lu Ming first. We must avenge them." Hearing Li Zishuan support them to avenge Lu Ming, Cheng Chimo and Wang Rong's eyes lit up. They had thought that Li Zishuan would reprimand them. After all, Li Zishuan was still a lieutenant of the black armored troops and would not condone his subordinates fighting each other over personal grudges. But very quickly, they heard Li Zishuan's tone change. "However, you all should know the abilities of those 5 from the 2nd Battalion's Team 1. Just based on their abilities on the surface, it will be difficult for you all to win against them, but it is not impossible. In the previous round of the competition, Su Zhenan and Zhao Xuqing of the 2nd Battalion's Team 1 were not injured during the fight, but after the fight, they were both beaten with a military rod. Amongst them, Su Zhenan even received a kick from General Qiu, so his injuries should be the most serious. So in the next round of the elimination round, these two should not be able to display their full abilities. Only 3 of their opponents are at full battle strength, so I'm guessing that they will definitely let the 3 who are not injured go up first. 3 out of 3 rounds will directly take the competition. This way, the injured Su Zhenan and Zhao Xuqing won't need to go up. As for you all, as long as you can win one of the first 3 rounds and drag the competition to the 4th, or even the 5th round, then you will have a chance of winning. As for the specific arrangements, it will be up to you, Shen Mu, as the leader to decide. But I still have to emphasize to you all that you can avenge Lu Ming, but you must know your limits. Do not harm anyone's life. This is the military camp. No one is allowed to break the military rules. Otherwise, if something happens, no one will be able to save you." After giving a simple analysis of the situation to Shen Mu and the other members of the E Battalion, Li Zishuan didn't forget to give a stern warning to everyone. To be honest, he also wanted to avenge Lu Ming. If the rules allowed it, He even wanted to personally fight Yuan Deshang, who had seriously injured Lu Ming. However, this was the military camp of the black armored troops. The military rules here were stricter than anywhere else. He was worried that Cheng Chumo, Wang Rong, and the rest would go overboard during the competition and violate the military rules. Don't worry, Lieutenant Li. We'll do our best to win this match and avenge Firehead Liu. We won't break any military rules. Shen Mu solemnly cupped his fists towards Li Zishuan and promised. Li Zishuan's analysis of the situation in the next round was exactly what he was thinking, and he agreed with Li Zishuan's final warning. Cheng Chumo rolled his eyes and whispered, "Revenge is revenge. When the time comes, who cares so much? If we only think about not breaking the military rules, how can we avenge old Liu?" This idiot had Cheng Yaojin as his backer, so even though he was in the Black Armored Army, he was not afraid of anything. In fact, he had nothing to be afraid of. As long as he did not commit murder, arson, or revolt in the camp, no one would take his life on account of Cheng Yaojin's face. At most, he would be given corporal punishment. All right, you guys prepare a little, and then go to the 2nd Battalion to prepare for the competition. Li Zishuan glared at Cheng Chumo, and then said to Shen Mu, Wang Rong, and the rest. Li Zishuan trusted Shen Mu's character and ability to handle matters. This person was quite talented and worth nurturing. Chapter 2038. As the home team, Team 1 of the 2nd Battalion naturally had to send someone out for the first round. Yuan Deshang laughed coldly and stood out from the crowd. First round, I'll go. Which one of you from the opposing team dares to fight? Arrogant. Although every member of Team 1 of the 2nd Battalion seemed to be very strong, but just like what Li Zishuan had analyzed, they were also facing some unfavorable factors. The most direct unfavorable factor was that they didn't have enough members. Su Jinan was heavily injured and couldn't fight. Although Zhao Xuqing could still fight, he had just suffered 30 strokes of the military rod. This would definitely affect his performance in the competition. Yuan Deshang understood that if they wanted to win against the relatively strong E Battalion, the best way was to send out their elites in the first 3 rounds and send out 3 of their members who were in peak condition. That way, they would be able to give the opponent a score of 3-0. If they couldn't take down the opposing team in the first 3 rounds and the competition dragged to the 4th or even the 5th round, then they would be in trouble. As the leader of Team 1 of the 2nd Battalion, Yuan Deshang felt that he had to stand out in the first round. After all, he was the strongest person in this team. He wanted to get a perfect start to the competition to boost the morale of the team. In the previous round, Li Zishuan had said those words in front of Qiu Xingong and the other 2nd Battalion soldiers. It could be said that it had dealt a huge blow to the morale of the 2nd Battalion. Now that the morale of the soldiers was low, they needed a great victory to shake off their low spirits and get excited again. Therefore, Yuan Deshang stood out with a face full of arrogance. "Ciao, it's Yuan Deshang." Cheng Chumo's face was ugly as he muttered to himself in a low voice. On the side of Team 1 of the 5th Battalion, the other 4 people's faces all changed when they heard this. Because who didn't know that Yuan Deshang was the only person from the 2nd Battalion who was heavily injured in the preliminary round. This person's vicious and merciless personality was already deeply ingrained in the hearts of the people. It was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't continue to maliciously injure people in this round. After all, Lu Ming was still lying in his tent. Shen Mu's face was gloomy as his mind spun rapidly. He began to plan who he should send out in the first round. Speaking of which, the first person to fight not only had to withstand Yuan Deshang's attack, but even if he lost, he couldn't lose too badly. Otherwise, it would hurt the morale of his team. On the other hand, which was also the most important thing, the first person to fight on their side had to be able to protect himself against Yuan Deshang. After all, Yuan Deshang had a dark history of maliciously injuring people. Those who fought against him were likely to be seriously injured if they were not careful. In this way, Even if they won the competition, it would be very difficult for them to obtain a good ranking in the following knockout stages with their team members missing. Therefore, in short, the first person to go on stage had to be able to control the situation and not lose too badly. Secondly, he had to be able to take a beating and not be seriously injured by Yuan Deshang. 2nd Battalion First Team, Yuan Deshang. Who will the Wu Battalion send out? Referee, Deng Kong looked at Shun Mu and asked loudly. Shun Mu couldn't help but look at Wang Rong and Yuchi Baolin. His gaze wavered between the two because the former was the strongest person in the Wu Battalion First Team on the surface, while the latter was the most resistant person on their side. If they sent Wang Rong up, if they were lucky, Wang Rong might even have a chance to win against Yuan Deshang. But if they were unlucky, Wang Rong might be seriously injured by Yuan Deshang. After all, Wang Rong's specialty was offense and not defense. As for Yuchi Baolin, although this child could take a beating, Shinmu wasn't sure if he could withstand Yuan Deshang's vicious beatings. No matter what, Yuan Deshang was many levels higher than Yuchi Baolin. Moreover, although Yuchi Baolin's defense was outstanding, he lacked some offensive means. If he were to go up against Yuan Deshang, the situation would definitely not be good. Old Shun, send me up for the first round. Just as Shun Mu was hesitating, Chung Chumo, the little clever kid, suddenly volunteered himself. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.